All right, fellas, how's it going? It's Jaffe. Good to see you. Yeah, no music today. This is a real impromptu stream because we have Romero coming on tomorrow, which I'm very excited about. I was and I still might be doing a game stream later tonight. There's some really cool stuff that are that we got to that I've been playing lately. I got the new Earth Defense Force, which is really Earth Defense Forcey, which if you dig that. I'll give you guys a heads up on what this is about. And there's a couple of people who are watching. And again, let's just be clear. If you've never watched this stream or whatever, let me just first off be clear. We don't do any of the hate speech shit in the chat or anything like that. You can debate, you can be verbose, you can be aggressive to some extent, but you can't be a dick. You can't be anti anything at all in terms of hate speech and whatnot. So, that's A. B is this is a chat raising money for the Trevor Project. The guy, debate's not the right word. I never use the word debate. There's a guy who has a channel called Pat Stares at Chaos, I think is what it's called. I had never heard of him until today. But I guess he's got a really big following and he's really successful over on Twitch and maybe a little bit on YouTube. And I'm going to get to sort of why he popped onto my radar. But ultimately though, I was like, hey, let's talk about it. And I said, discuss. I didn't say debate, but regardless, and he wasn't a fan of that idea. And I said, I think he thought I was looking for, in his words, like, I don't think he used relevancy. Somebody else used relevancy, but views or audience or eyeballs is what he said. And I said, well, no, we can do it on your channel so you can get all the views. I said, let's do it for charity. So it's clear this isn't a money grab. And he just wasn't having it. And that's okay. And to his credit, so I said, well, look, I'm going to go live. I'm going to do this thing. Any money we raise on this, we'll give to the Trevor Project, not just because it's Pride Month, but because that is a charity near and dear to my heart. It helps LGBT youth under 25 who are at risk, who are in sort of severe trauma, whether it's they need a place to stay or whatever. So it's a good charity. Jam to Josh says, what did you do? I didn't do anything. So Black Viper, yes, Pat donate. So Pat, this guy, he's like, well, no, Jaffe, I'm not coming on your show, but I will donate, which I thought was great. So Pat, even though I don't know if we would ever be pals in real life, it's a nice thing. And that's wonderful. So not that I can speak for the Trevor Project, but on behalf of just human beings everywhere, that's very kind. And I appreciate you doing that. And then, yeah, so whatever we raise, that's going there. Okay. So let me get into what is about this stream is about. And again, play kind. Rob the Mod is here. Don't be a dick. You can disagree. We can do all that. That's fine. You can call in. You can be aggressive on the phone and all that shit on the Discord. But what you can't do is be a dick. So let's just keep that, Let's keep that clear. If you want to call into the show, let me give you guys the Discord, and then I will show you this tweet that kind of set things in motion. There is a 10-minute delay that you have to wait through just to keep sort of trolls off. Okay. And Inky's here. Thank you, Inky. Okay. Inky will be modding as well. Okay. All right. So you guys know I had Cliff Bleszinski on the show recently. Cliff is a friend of mine. I've worked with Cliff, not as a colleague, but I've worked in the industry with Cliff we probably got started about the same time. And so basically Cliff put out a tweet the other day that was saying he's working on a new IP. And he was talking about some of the people he was working with. And it looks like it's going to be a comic book or a graphic novel or something. There's part of me, because some people know he's writing an autobiography. I'd love to see that go graphic novel. But whatever it is, who knows? And, some people were excited, but a lot of people, as they are wont to do, were really dickish to Cliff Bleszinski, which I still don't get. I mean, I get, he came off back in the day as an arrogant dude. It was a character. He was an insecure guy. He admits all of this stuff. He's not that anymore. But regardless, you know, you have a right. You make your bed, you lie in it. There are people who will never like me no matter what because they think I'm like a member of Gamergate, even though I, you know, what? Right? But that's the way it is. So anyway, so Cliff puts that out, and then GameSpot covers it. So let me show you on the screen if I can do this. There we go. So GameSpot says, hey, Gears of War, Cliff Bleszinski working on a new IP. And this guy, Pat Stares at Chaos, says, oh, goody. I hope his employees have a bunch of savings for when his studio goes under. Okay. And then I wrote back, because people have been just dogpiling on Cliff ad nauseum. You know, it's just been, you know, relentless if you go over to like certain message boards. It's like, if you don't like him, don't follow him. But here's what I wrote. I wrote, and I was responding directly. I didn't talk to Pat, but I retweeted Pat's thing, and I said, here's my response. I said, but we are such a cruel, mean species, but I assume the mean is just a smokescreen for our fear of the chaos of life. I get it. I don't like it, though. The older I get, the less I like it. I hope we survive long enough to evolve. And yes, I was calling out this tweet as being incredibly mean-spirited. And I think it is. I think it absolutely is. This is, you know, Cliff's a guy who... it doesn't matter. I'm not going to defend Cliff. Cliff watches the stream sometimes. He's more than welcome to call in. He knows he is, and we can talk about it. And again, I don't know Pat Stares at Chaos. I'd never heard of him till today. And I'm not saying that like that's a backhanded, you know, like he's irrelevant. There's a billion people streaming these days. I don't know him, but he clearly has a big fan base. People like what he's about. That's great. So he sends me a response. He says, this you. And it says, the title of it is Most Gamers Should Shut the Fuck Up About Crunch. Cyberpunk Crunch is How Winning is Done. Okay. So, and so there's two kind of tracks to this. The first one is he's talking about Cliff Bleszinski being a bad guy because he didn't pay his employees when he shut down Boss Key. Well, my understanding from Cliff directly as well as the reporting is that's not true. Now, he may not have paid his employees the amount of severance that you would prefer. When I had to shut my company down, we did medical for about 4 months, and we did severance for I don't know how many weeks or months it was, but we intentionally shut the project down early because we knew if we did, we would have more money in the bank to give people, okay? All I know is Cliff definitely gave severance. He definitely helped people out within reason. It may not be satisfactory, and that's fine for you to have that opinion about Cliff, and you know, that's great. But that doesn't mean that the tweet is warranted from a standpoint of he's just a bad, evil guy. You try running a fucking company. I'm not saying, I mean, again, we shut ours down because we wanted people to have more than 3 weeks of severance. But you don't know their situation. You've probably, if you're watching this, you've probably never run your own company. You've probably never had to shut your own company down. Maybe there was a thing of like, I mean, you really don't know, right? Remember they did Lawbreakers, which was what got them in trouble because it didn't perform. And then they put out this thing called Radical Heights. Well, I remember at the time, you know, Cliff was like, look, this is a Hail Mary. There's some people on the team that really believe in it. Let's see if we can, you never know, you know, it could work. Well, they put it out. So I mean, that could have been, you know, they could have said, we got 3 months, fellas. We can either shut the doors now or we can try this Radical Heights thing. Maybe they voted and said, okay, we're going to go with Radical Heights. And it didn't work and they didn't have as much money left. We had a couple of prototypes at Bartlett Jones. We could have said, fuck it, let's burn through the next 4 months of money, but in hope that somebody comes and picks up this game we're prototyping. But if it doesn't work, there's not going to be much to pay people when we have to lay everybody off. We don't know the details. You honestly don't know the details. All we know is that, yes, Cliff did pay his people. It may not have been as much as you or I would like. It may have been. I don't know. But, you know, I've talked to Cliff. Has Pat talked to Cliff about this? Cliff was on my show literally 3 weeks ago. We talked about this. The other track, and I'm going to get to the chat, I promise. I'm not ignoring you guys. I just want to get all this up and out like my therapist says I need to, and then I'll take your calls. I'll take your chat. We'll talk about this. The other thing, though, is he's talking about Crunch. Pat Stares at Chaos says, you know, now, again, I asked him if he actually watched this video. And I think his response was something like, I watched some of it. I'm like, well, okay. But ultimately, I'll give you my position that has never changed on Crunch, and then I will go to the chat, and you guys can, you know, agree, disagree, debate, whatever you want to do. Just don't be assholes to people. So my take on Crunch is this, right? I think Crunch historically, video game Crunch, automotive Crunch, Crunch at Apple, Crunch in the medical field, Crunch at Pfizer to create the vaccine. That is the capitalist society in which we are in. We don't have social safety nets. We vote against our best interests when it comes to voting these people in. We don't pay attention to politics enough to realize that no matter what these people stand up there and say, whatever party they're in, for the most part, not always, but for the most part, they do not give a fuck about us, okay? And so we are in a maze, a rat maze. We are on a hamster wheel, whatever metaphor you want to use, where people... because they want to, some people, not all people, I'll get to that, but some people want to achieve great things, and some people just want to stay employed. I have always said, and I can't fathom, I would have to have a brain injury to change this opinion. I have always said, if you are an individual that's like, look, I value home-life balance, I value my health, I love working on games or whatever, but I don't want to be crunched. I've been like, yeah. No, there's no problem with that. But what I've always said is, and I say that in this video, if you go work though at Naughty Dog, if you work at Sony Santa Monica, if you work at who knows what's happening at CD Projekt Red these days, but if you work at a company that historically has had crunch, and if they are honest with you and they say, look, there's not always, hell, if you go to Rockstar San Diego, are you kidding me? If you work at a company that has historically had crunch, and or they tell you up front, because you should ask, do you guys crunch? And they are honest about it, then I'm sorry, that is the contract into which you are entering. And while you may have a right to complain about it, I mean, that's, that would be like me going into the military and going, but they're shooting at me. It's like, yeah, because it's the military, you moron. Now, are there companies out there that are trying to reduce crunch? Yes. They've been in the news recently. They talked a little bit about Insomniac. Double Fine talked the other day about, there's some caveats to both of those we didn't crunch stories. But that said, though, and then there's also companies like Clay Entertainment that never crunch. They never have. They say they never will. And if you want to make games, go do that. Go work there or start your own company or be indie or whatever. I can't help you. But what you don't get to do, you get to, but you sound like a moron. What you don't get to do is attack the people at Naughty Dog like they're evil when they say, look, welcome to Naughty Dog. This is our culture. We want to be the very best. We want to be the cutting edge of technology, of linear cutscenes, cinematic story games, of play mechanics, whatever it is on any given game that they're working on. We want to achieve beyond what is the norm, okay? That is clear. That is laid out in the brochure. It's written on the wall. To go there and then be like, I have to crunch. Yeah, you do, because you should have known. If you're smart enough to get a job at Naughty Dog, you're smart enough to have done your research, which doesn't take a genius to realize that's a crunch studio, okay? The last thing I'll say about this, most gamers should shut the fuck up about crunch. You can complain if you want to. Look, I think Bobby Kotick is evil. I don't buy Activision games anymore. I got to go over there and give them to me for free, but I don't buy them anymore, and I don't give them my money anymore because of Bobby Kotick not paying taxes, and because, or not Bobby Kotick, but Activision, but he runs Activision, and because of the fact that China, there are issues with China, they totally capitulate to China left, right, and forward. I want nothing to do with it, whether you're talking about Blizzard, Activision, or just Activision. I want nothing to do with the company, even though a lot of companies are in with China. That's a pretty bad one. Okay? Well, I just don't deal with it. I won't give them my money. So you can sit there, if you're a journalist and you write about crunch, but you still take money to review their games, get early code, advertise their games, you should shut the fuck up about crunch. If you're a gamer and you go online and you complain about crunch, which you have a right to, but then you turn around day one, week one, month one, and buy the very games that you're complaining about and give that system money, you should shut the fuck up about it. Okay? People talk, this last thing I'll say, I'll get to the chat, I promise. People talk about unions. Well, I've always said unions aren't probably going to work in video games right now. People, oh, you don't like unions. I didn't say I didn't like unions. I've always said unions are only as strong as the leverage that the union can put against the people they're negotiating against, right? So if you're a plumbers union in Philadelphia, you're just like, we're not going to work, and the shit's going to back up into people's homes. Shit, that's some leverage, boys. You goddamn right it is, okay? But if you are an animation rigger on a game, or if you are a lighting expert on a game, and you say, we're all banding together and we're not going to come into work, Sony Santa Monica would say one of two things. Well, one of three things, because they're good people over there. They'd say, well, let's work on this. Can we make this better? What's happening? What did we miss? Because they do put a premium on treating people respectfully and kind, but let's assume they didn't. Then they would say, okay, well, here's what we're doing, fellas. We're going to outsource all of this. Other than the above the line stuff, the director, the CTO, the lead artist, the lead animator, all those people will make individual deals with. Well, maybe they'll get what you're asking for. They'll get their back end, or they'll get this or that or the other, and everything else will outsource. Not a problem. We'll go to some country that we don't have to pay as much for, and there's no unions there. Well, is that cruel? Is that mean? Sure. But ultimately, they're not your friends, they're companies. And so they will go do that because unions in video games don't have any leverage. And I always ask people that are like, we should unionize. I'm not saying, yeah, you should. But how are you going to convince these companies to come to the table and actually acquiesce and give you what it is you say is important to you when you have nothing to offer? Because if you leave, they can either change the kind of games they're making. It's not like Among Us or Fortnite. Fortnite's big now, but in terms of the art for that, which is where a lot of the time comes from, or Roblox is going to cost the same amount to make. You don't need the same quality of people to make that. So if Sony could either say, yeah, fuck it, we're just going to change the kind of games we make, or we're going to outsource. Okay, so that's why this video is what this video is. And this good sir fellow Patrick, or Pat yells at chaos, or let me go to his thing. It's Pat stares at chaos, is coming at me, I guess, because he didn't watch the whole video, and he's kind of saying it like, oh, Jaffe's for crunch. I'm like, I'm not for crunch, although I do think if you want to achieve great things, more often than not, you do have to crunch. But there you go. Okay, that's it. The phone line is open. I'll go to the chat. Let me see what you guys have to say. We don't have to agree, but that's where we're at. Jaffe, you were a developer, says Jimmy Gilchrist, for many years. People should respect your point of view. Well, they don't have to respect my point of view, James. It would be nice if they did. But that's okay. But what I don't respect, though, from them is if they lie, or if they come to the table and I'm like, guys, I'm explaining this to you specifically. I'm telling you what this is. Tell me how this is a bad thing. Tell me how I'm wrong about this. But, that's not kind of what they're saying. And well, right. I mean, some of you are probably kids or something. I don't know. But there's a guy in the chat. It's going fast. I'm sorry. It's like Desister 1201 says, I'm not for crunch, but yes, because the world is not black and white. I'm not for crunch for the people who say that's not for me. Right. I don't think that's a problem. That you can go do that work somewhere that doesn't have crunch, or you can start your own thing. I did bring up the employee thing, Powerful. I'll get to it in a minute. I already brought it up, but I'll bring it back up. But there are companies that here's the only way I would totally defend anti-crunch is if let's say Jade Raymond's starting a company, which she's starting a company up north with Sony. And if you come to Jade Raymond and you say, I'm really good at programming, and then she says, yes, I want to hire you, but do you guys have crunch? And she says, no, I'm all about work-life balance. Here's what our schedule is, and here are our breakaway points. And if it turns out that the game is not going well, or we haven't found the fun yet, blah, 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 this is how we're solving it. And you're like, this is amazing. I'm in, right? And then she basically, intentionally or not, lied to you. Then there's a problem. Then there's absolutely a problem. Narak, I think I said your name right, says there's a distinct difference. You're right. I agree with you. Between people wanting to work extra to finish a project and people forcing you to work extra to finish a project. Well, no, what I agree with is there is a difference between crunch that is the company is open about and you entering into it open-mindedly and with an awareness. Do you guys want the lights on? Okay. Jesus. All right. Hang on. I thought it would add to the mood. I really didn't. I didn't think about it. I'm sorry. But anyway, yeah, I mean, there's a difference. So okay. Bella Rosa says, Jaffe, do you think it tells you on the application that there is crunch? Dude, I worked in video games for 24 years, man. I've run 2 companies. I worked at Sony for 20 of those years or 18 of those years or whatever. Yes, at this point, there's 2 things. Let me ask you a question. If you are in the industry, Bellarosa, and you go to get a job at Naughty Dog, would you be surprised at this point if they crunch or not? Right? I mean, there are some companies that historically have crunched. Do your research. But if you ask them point blank, which you should, do you crunch? And they say no, and then they do, then you have an advocate in me. Then, not that you need it, but you have a supporter in me, of course. But I guarantee you, if you go to Sony, Rockstar San Diego, CD Projekt Red, Naughty Dog, and say, do you crunch? They're going to be honest with you. Rare Behemoth, I'm sorry. Here's what's funny about folks like you, Rare Behemoth. Rare Behemoth says, it's amazing the lengths you go to defend exploitation. I'm not defending exploitation. What I am saying, man. And it's almost like it's easy to throw, peanuts at people on the stage and take pot shots from the peanut gallery, which it comes from. But you're offering nothing other than criticism. Led Zeppelin fan, stop embarrassing yourself. Then be specific. Explain to me how. Explain to me how. You don't actually want to enter the debate. You want to. Couch says, Jaffe, it's an awful take. Again, guys, I'm not being a dick. I'm not being difficult. I'm not defending. You know what? I can't help you, Trey. Trey Carpenter says you are defending exploitation. No, you know what? I'm done. I'm done with some of you guys because you're not bright enough to have this conversation. Mr. Jake says, so your defense is it's going to happen, therefore it's good? No. I never said it's going to happen, therefore it's good. Dylan, I never said I'm not defending exploitation, but it's absolutely necessary. What I said was there are absolutely times where people who want to go above and beyond, whether it was Steve Jobs with the Macintosh, whether it's Naughty Dog or Sony Santa Monica when I was making games at Sony Santa Monica, or they're making games now, whether it's people working at NASA trying to land a goddamn Mars rover on Mars, you think they're like, well, 5 o'clock, boys, quitting time. Mr. Slade pulled the whistle. No. That's how, like the video says, that is how winning is done if you want to achieve at that level. If you want to climb a hill, I don't judge you. There's no problem with that. If you're like, I never want to do anything more than climb a hill, then great. But don't bitch about the fact that there are some people who want to climb Everest. The only difference would be that if they tell you you're climbing a hill and they make you go up Everest, then you absolutely have a right to be upset. Anyway. So, but here's what I'll tell you at this point. With the chat and with phone calls, and I'm going to bring in Ricardo in a second, I will absolutely in good faith respond to real questions. What I won't do is just respond to troll comments. If you really are intelligent enough to have this very complicated debate, this debate on a very complicated, important issue, then you'll put that into your chat. So let me address a couple of the things that have come up, and then I'll bring on Ricardo. Okay, well, here's a great question. Magdell says, we've agreed crunch is necessary to pull off today's standard of AAA production. What can we, the gamers, do to mitigate? Well, you can do a lot of things in terms of you can say, I'm not going to buy that game. I'm not going to run out and buy a game that I know was made with crunch. I'm going to support indie devs. Like somebody in the chat earlier was talking about Hades. Well, okay, Hades, first off, let's be clear. Hades is a wonderful game. It's one of my favorite games of last year, but Hades is not a complicated game to make, comparatively speaking, to these AAA games. That's number one. Number two, Hades was in early access for over a year before it officially launched and got reviewed and got officially judged by the people that are going to put the message out to the world that this game is available. Most of the games I play are indie games. I'm literally playing a game right now. What is this? I'm playing a game right now called some Labyrinth game, which is literally you're moving around a fucking it's like a kid's storybook. It's phenomenal. Probably made with 3 people. Okay? So yes, that's one thing you can do. The other thing you can do is stop assuming that the management is the problem. I've seen some people in the chat go, oh, it's just bad management. You don't know anything, okay? Are there times when bad management causes crunch? Absolutely, 100%. But more often than not, the crunch comes from the fact that video games are not like movies. And one of the reasons Insomniac didn't crunch as much, and I'm not saying they didn't crunch at all. I don't buy that for a second. But, I got to get this. I'm going to get that in a minute. Desister says Hades is greater than Last of Us 2. Hey, by the way, you're not going to get any argument here. I loved Last of Us 2, and I actually did like it more than Hades. But, hey, another thing you guys can do, or some of you guys can do, to get educated on the fact that how many gamers out there think that graphics and production value is equatable to quality? It's ridiculous to me. It's an interactive medium. People should be, Return of the Obra Dinn. I think it was made by one person, 1.5 people. It's totally lo-fi, but boy, that's one of the best games to come out in the last 5-10 years. I agree with you. I'm not suggesting that you need production value, but that is where a lot of the crunch goes for a lot of the people. But anyway, what I was saying, I'm sorry I got off track, but I saw that I really should not look at the chat while I'm answering a question. So Rare Behemoth says if AAA can't be made without crunch, then they shouldn't be made. Human suffering shouldn't be a mandatory component for entertainment. Okay, but that's an easy thing, Rare Behemoth, for you to say. And it's fun to type, and maybe for a few minutes you feel good about yourself, and that's great. I understand. But I'm coming to this conversation honestly. Okay? If that really were true, okay, then ask yourself why so many people don't care. Right? It's easy to virtue signal. I'm literally out here. I mean, the thing is, I am literally out here on the front, or I was on the front lines. I'm literally out here offering problems that need to be solved for the things that you guys say you care about. I'm telling you, if you want unions, you have to solve the leverage problems. I'm telling you that maybe there could even be a law that says if your studio has crunch, and this is how the law defines crunch, that has to be disclosed to an employee. I have no problem with any of that. Okay? But when you just sit there and say, if a AAA can't be made without crunch, then they shouldn't be made. Well, that would work if you live in a dictatorship or even a socialist society, but you live in a society where money walks, sadly, and I don't mean to say this like a jerk, but bullshit talks. And you can say that all day, but people show up in droves for Call of Duty, for the Naughty Dog games, for the Sony Santa Monica games. They show up in motherfucking droves. Okay, so if you're right, then y'all should stop buying them. Wow, I can't do that. If y'all were right, Polygon, Kotaku, y'all should stop reporting on them. I mean, it really is. I mean, it's not the equivalent. I want to be very clear. I'm not equating crunch to Nazis. Don't assume I'm doing that. But it's the equivalent, though, of the time when people knew what the Nazis were doing and they were still doing business with them because it was good for them personally. It's the same thing with these companies in China. That's a lot closer because of what's happening with the Muslims. Okay? It's like, well, what am I going to do? Not play Blizzard games? What am I going to do? Not play Call of Duty? Well, you could think about it. You could consider it. So, but Rare Behemoth, unless you are proposing a law that says AAA games can't get made without crunch, which I don't think would be, legal. It wouldn't pass. That's a great point, Pramitz. So this is a long-winded way to say shut the fuck up, stop talking about it, and vote with your wallet. Ultimately, yeah. Because if you ran a company, and we're going to talk about Cliffy B, I already talked about, but I'll talk about it again. If you ran a company, and people didn't buy your shit because you crunched, you would fucking stop crunching. Michael says, you'll notice no one is debating you on the merits of your points. They just throw out opposing viewpoints without explaining what is wrong. It's disingenuous tripe. Oh, I know. Again, like there's this Joe Don. Don't like it, don't buy it. It's such a redundant statement. Who gives a shit? It's an accurate statement. Do you like Nazis? Well, if a Nazi opens a restaurant, don't go eat there. I have LGBT people up and down my family. I'm a total progressive even if I didn't. I don't go to Chick-fil-A anymore. You know why? Because they're total awful to LGBT people. But I miss the French fries. I grew up in Alabama. And the Chick-fil-A's were everywhere there before they get into all this shit. Ivan, you're an idiot. Ivan, you're a fucking idiot. Don't exploit people, but it's hard, though. No one's saying that. You're just a fucking moron, dude. All right, let me get to Cliff, then I'm going to bring in these chats real quick. Again, you're welcome to call in. You can be aggressive. You can be passionate. What you can't do, I mean, you can, but I'll get rid of you, is be a hate speech fella. Okay. So the Cliff thing I said, I've addressed this. There is word going around that I think this Pat Chaos fella thinks that I guess he thinks that Cliff didn't pay his people because that was the gist of his tweet. And then people were like, yeah, Cliff fired everybody and didn't pay everybody. And I'm like, that's not my understanding of it. My understanding of it is people got 3-week severance. Is that, like I said at the beginning of the stream, is that enough for you? I know when we shut our company down, we paid more than 3 weeks, but we also didn't, we didn't do, my understanding is the team, there's the Discord in the link if anybody wants it. My understanding is the team, at least some of the team, really felt strongly about Radical Heights. That was not Cliff's game. And clearly the money that they spent to keep the team going to launch Radical Heights, when we shut our company down, we didn't do that because we're like, I don't have it in the tank anymore. I don't think I have it in the goddamn tank anymore. And I'd rather just get rid of, the people, but make sure they have a lot more money to go off with. But ultimately he did pay them. So Dat Asuna says, no, Cliff made a specific claim about giving him 6 months out of pocket and was caught in a lie. Okay. I don't know anything about that, but if Cliff lied, that's shitty. That's unfortunate. I don't support that. I like Cliff very much, but I don't agree with that. So yes, Sir Wolf says Cliffy said he paid 3 months and he only paid 3 weeks. I agree. That's not a good thing. Paying 3 weeks isn't a good or bad thing. I mean, ideally you would pay more, but I just explained why maybe he couldn't. But do I think lying about it? Yeah, I don't support that. And if I had known he had said that, and if I had proof he had said that, I would have brought it up to him when he was on the show a couple of weeks ago and just asked him about it. I have no idea. But yeah, I'm not commenting on that part of it. I'm commenting on the part where, the Pat Chaos fella says that you need to save up your money if you go work for Cliff because you're not going to, you're going to need it, implying his studio is going to, close down. And I'm like, well, he did pay severance. Okay. And then and look, if the guy would have agreed, I mean, again, the funny part is he came at me like I'm trying to get relevancy from him. I don't know who he is, but I'm not a moron. I see all you fans of his out there. I get clearly he's a big YouTuber or streamer, but I don't do that. I literally had the guy, one of the originators of Gamergate on a week ago. His video just went up yesterday. The guy literally has 2 followers on Twitter. Okay, I'm doing a stream because I find things interesting. Okay, whether it's John Romero coming on tomorrow, 7 a.m., don't forget. If John Romero is coming on tomorrow or someone you've never heard of, but they have an interesting opinion about something, that's why I do the fucking stream, because it's interesting. To me anyway, hopefully it's interesting to you as well. All right. Thomas Logan says, so Pat's point still stands. Pat's point stands if Pat's point was, hey, if you're going to go work for Cliff Bleszinski, be aware he lied, assuming this is true, And I don't know if it is, but I'll take your word for it. I'm assuming you have the facts to back this up. Assuming that he lied about the fact that he actually will give you 6 months severance, but he only gives you 3 weeks, I would say if you're going to go do an interview, then, make sure you ask Cliff about that. But that would be an accurate thing, Pat would say. But he wasn't really clear because he also made it read like Cliff doesn't pay anybody if the company goes under. And that's not true. Okay. Let me bring on, well, we lost Beto. Let me bring on Ricardo first, and I'll bring on Jimmy. Ricardo, it's always good to talk to you, buddy. What's going on? What do you think about this crazy nonsense?
Hi, Jeffrey.
How are you?
You're talking about, right? Because James started talking with me in the other chat, and
okay. So do you have something you want to say? You want me to bring you on later?
It's about Crunch, right?
I'll bring you on later, Ricardo. All right. Jimmy Gilchrist, what do you want to talk about?
Hey, Dave.
Yeah.
Am I on?
You are on.
Yeah. I recommend the book Masters of Doom.
I have it. I've read it.
It's software. These guys were working more than 100 hours a week, and they loved it, what they did. They worked a normal 9-to-5 job making crappy games, and they went home and made Doom. And it was like machines. If you don't have that passion, I don't think you belong in the creative space.
No, I mean,
mediocre.
Can you turn down your computer, James, real quick, because I can hear the echo.
All right, how are we doing now?
Okay, good. So, yeah, again, as I've said, I think what people misunderstand is I think everybody needs to be that driven and passionate, and they don't. But I do agree with you 100% that if you are trying to be best of the best, I mean, think about any other field. Whether you're in the military, you're a pilot, I mean, whatever it is you're going to do, you have to go well above and beyond. And I think, James, it's a generational thing. I don't know how old a bunch of these people are in here, but maybe this is a younger group of kids who literally just, I don't know, because and I don't mean that like all young kids are this way, but I have noticed that sort of my kids' friends and stuff, and I'm all into social justice and stuff, but there's this idea that anybody who has to work hard or even wants to work hard is somehow, there's the evil man keeping them down. And I'm like, I worked my ass off for God of War, but I got time off. I got bonuses for it. And if I didn't, I wouldn't have done it. But I don't, what happens is they like to call in and they like to sort of raise the roof and act like they're all high and mighty. But they don't really have anything to offer other than just little platitudes. I don't understand it. I don't understand it.
Well, the thing is, people nowadays have a bad work ethic. And it's not because they're lazy. It's because they work menial and unfulfilling jobs.
Okay.
They don't grasp the concept that you can do good work and it can be rewarding. They assume all work is just soul-crushing, and that's not the case. But I think a lot of the video games we play are mediocre, very procedural, so I don't think the fan base has a lot of enthusiasm.
Right.
To create.
No,
I think that's a problem as well.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm with you, James, though, but let's see. Maybe somebody can change my mind. And there's some new people in the chat I haven't seen. Let's bring them on. James, always a pleasure. Thanks, buddy. All right. I've never talked. Maybe I've talked to this guy. I don't know. Are you a new guy? Where'd you go, buddy? Hang on. This is a guy. So I'm bored. Is that you?
Yeah. Hi.
Hey, what's up, man?
Hi. In my opinion, and I don't think a lot of people that play games will ever recognize this, I feel like gamers are one of the big reasons why crunch is a thing. Because the way they act whenever a game is delayed is pretty crazy at times, and the way they demand for things is pretty crazy at times.
Well, yeah, it's a triangle, right? It's we want it on time, and we want it amazing. If it's not amazing, if it doesn't look next gen, we hate you. And then, oh my God, you're crunching, right? It's those three. Or there's actually a fourth. It's a square. How dare you raise the prices, right? So now you got four things. They hate everything unless it's. I mean, yeah, but keep going.
Well, another thing I was going to say is that like they piss and moan too much whenever like Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo shows indies. they're like, oh God, more indies.
Right.
It's like, if you're not going to support that, but we'll constantly support high quality AAA titles like Last of Us, it's like, what do you want them to do? Because it's going to, like, if you don't want them to crunch, it's going to take, like, I don't know, like, I'm not a video game maker, so I would assume like 6 years or something normally.
Right.
So it's like, what do you want? You can't have both sides of the coin.
No, you can't. You cannot. That's absolutely right. And I'll tell you what, if these guys who are so high and mighty about crunch, I hope when the Amico comes out, because I met with Tommy Tallarico about it, the Amico. The Amico, those games don't cost anywhere near. They don't crunch as long. The games get made in 4 or 5 months. Or go play a bunch of mobile games because you don't have to crunch on those because the expectations of the audience is very different. And there's a very lucrative market. It's more lucrative than the console market. There are options for game developers who don't want to crunch.
Yeah, and I feel like it's like people don't, it's like, why don't you put that same energy to a, fast food place that are making their employees work all these hours and don't pay them enough,
That's right. I agree. I mean, again, I'm not saying exploitation is good. What I'm saying, though, is if the company is honest about it before you take the job and they don't lie to you about it, then it's not exploitation. You're willingly entering into this because whether it is for something on your resume, whether it is for passion, whether it is for promised rewards that you should have written down and sue the fuck out of the company if they don't deliver at the end, you are entering into it willingly because there's something in it for you. If they lie to you about it and they crunch you, then you have a case. But
oh yeah, definitely.
That's not what I'm saying. So I don't really understand what the problem is there. All right, man. I appreciate the call, buddy. Thank you so much.
Yep.
All right. Stilren says another thing is the problem is with unmovable deadlines. That means they have to work 80 hours. The CEO gets bonuses, and then EA Activision fired a lot of people. Yeah, it's awful. It's absolutely awful. So hey, here's something interesting. The next time Dean Takahashi has Bobby Kotick on stage, don't yell at me, yell at him. It's like, you're a motherfucker, not Dean, but Bobby Kotick, your company doesn't pay taxes, at least in 2018. You asked the American people to pay your taxes in 2018. You capitulate to China, and then on top of it, you literally have people that own stock in your company saying that you are overpaid. Well, today it's starting to look like, or that was actually at EA today where they're not going to vote against that. But yeah, why is he making so much goddamn money? I absolutely agree. I fucking absolutely agree. I mean, again, it's not like I'm sitting here saying it should be okay. And again, this idea that, well, it's management. No, it's not management. It can be management sometimes, but those people don't last very long. Fellas, I'm telling you, when I made Twisted Metal 1 and 2 and Black and the last one, all those games had crunch. Do you know who was managing those games? Former employees of Evans and Sutherland. If you don't know what that is, look it up. But they were military contractors who worked on simulators for the goddamn Air Force. These were not people that missed deadlines, okay? And they understood how to schedule projects. So it wasn't management. And it's like, well, what is it? It's the fact that you don't, I'll give you a great example. Ratchet & Clank. I don't know how much crunch the new Ratchet & Clank had. I love the new Ratchet & Clank. Think it's phenomenal, okay? But it is, truth be told, it's making the same game, but with a lot of great production and a lot of great execution. 85% of that game is a template game at this point. They know what it is. They know what the weapon wheel is. They know how power-ups work. When we made Drawn to Death, we probably spent 8 months figuring out, it didn't work, it was dud, but we tried to figure out how to do pickups because there were so many ways you could do pickups, right? Movies don't have as much crunch. They have overtime, but not as much because they're screenplays. Video games don't have that because fun is not something you can find on paper. And you can say the new Ratchet & Clank had none, Shin, in the chat, but unless you can link me to something other, and I guarantee you I have more data than you. I have the data you have, which is the article that said 2 people, one was a level designer and one was an animator, and both of those people said, well, we never crunched. We never crunched on the game, and that was all most people have. So I reached out to a contact at Sony who's Insomniac, Sony, same thing. And I said, hey, and it was Insomniac. And I said, what about this? I said, can you come on the show? They said, no, I'm not coming on the show. There's no fucking way. I said, fine. Well, can you at least, I won't say your name, but do you guys crunch? And they wouldn't answer. But what they said was, they said Ted Price and Insomniac historically, consistently has always been about making work-life balance a priority. And there's proof to that, and that they always get these great awards for best companies to work at and all that stuff, okay? But he didn't say we don't crunch, okay? So all I'm kind of saying is this idea that just because some article wrote they didn't crunch, and then there's two people saying I didn't crunch, I don't think you really have a pot to piss in, pal. I mean, you might, but you got to give me some more data. All right, this is a guy named World. World, you're on. What's up, man? Or ma'am, or whoever you are. Are you there, buddy? What?
Sorry, the stream was just a little bit delayed.
That's all right. What's going on?
It's all right. Yes, no, but I do agree with you on crunch in the sense that if it's such a big deal, then just don't buy the game. Just vote with your wallet. That's the main thing a person should do. If a company is going against your principles, then just don't support the company.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
Okay, but I agree, but why do you think a lot of these people in the chat don't seem to share that view or my view? Because I'm with you, 100%.
Oh, I can tell you exactly why. It's because they're E-Daddy, they're E-Celebs, the people they look up to. They're the ones who they're the ones
Oh,
who...
fuck, cunt, motherfucker, shit. I say it all. Don't worry about that. Keep going.
No, I wasn't. Okay, so they're the ones who tell them that crunch is bad. And also, the idea of exploitation of itself is bad. They don't like that idea. But they don't really care about where their food comes from. They don't care where how the clothes are made, how their cars are funded, and all this other stuff, how the government uses their money. All of this, it's just this one thing when it comes to video games is what really drives them mad.
So, but do you think it's because maybe fundamentally they know there's a lot of, did I lose you? Fundamentally, they know there's a lot of shit that's rotten, and this is maybe the one thing they can get their heads around, or?
Maybe, but I think it's to do with people like Pat and again,
I don't know that Pat guy is. I mean, I'm really not even joking. I'm not trying to be.
Oh,
I mean, is he a good guy and he and I just have a disagreement, or is he like, who's that guy? That guy who went to Boogie's house and almost got shot. Is he one of those kind of guys? I don't know who he is.
No. The reason why Pat is so popular is because back like a decade ago, he was part of a two-man show. The Super Best Friends play that was a big show on Machinima.
Okay.
And it was very popular with young teenagers, like the 10 to 16-year-old crowd, and those people grew up and now Pat's a streamer after Super Best Friends things fell apart.
Okay.
So even though he may appear like a slightly smaller streamer, or like not that big.
No, he's got a bigger following than I do. I mean, I'm not mocking the guy. I was just asking, does he come at it in good faith? Is what I'm asking.
Well, Pat doesn't know what good faith is at all.
Okay.
It's his character, so to speak. Well, it's 50-50 his character.
Got it.
He's known as the angriest Pat, sort of thing. It's kind of why he was popular, is because his character was very verbose or whatever
Got
like getting angry at trivial shit all the
Understood.
time.
All right, I got it. I got it, and that makes sense. And anything else you want to add? Anything new, or that's the gist? But I'm with you, pal. You and I agree.
No, that's just about it. Oh, one thing.
Yeah.
Even if it's such a big deal for them, but they still want to play the games, and they can just pirate the games. Just don't support financially the company's decisions.
I mean, I don't agree with that either, but sure. I mean, at least do something. So,
yeah.
All right, man. Thanks, buddy. So there's a guy in the chat, Beware, says, why don't you bring someone on that doesn't agree with you? I'm bringing these names I've never heard of. I've got people like George and Ricardo in the chat. I've got Caveman. I'm not saying they're going to agree with me, but I know them and I roughly have an idea. If you want to call in, call in. This isn't like a limited thing. I would love for someone to call in that doesn't agree. Not to be a dick, because I would like to understand. There's a guy in the chat, Mad Magdeal says, do you consider it morally acceptable that companies won't admit to the average consumer how much extra work they put their employees through? I mean, let's put it this way. I don't know if it's morally acceptable. If somebody were to say, we're going to propose a law, and the law is going to say, kind of like when we had to label foods, the law is, I mean, I don't know how you would arrive at this number, but let's say that we could. Let's say we could arrive at some kind of number that said, this is how much crunch was done, or this is how employees were treated. Yeah, I would vote for that. I would say absolutely. I'm not trying to hide anything. Bacon Magma says, Jaffe, your video is getting extremely more dislikes than likes. Does it bother you? No, I don't really care. What am I mean, think about, I want you to think about that, Bacon, for a moment. How do you call in, Will? Will, I'm putting the link in the chat right now. All you do is join our Discord. You don't have to, you don't have to pay anything. You don't have to be, you can abandon it right when you're done. But yeah, join our Discord, pull yourself into the call-in waiting room. But Bacon, it is interesting though about that question for once, about this idea of, dislikes. I see, and again, maybe I'm just an old fucking fuddy-duddy. Yeah, I said fuddy-duddy, saying, but maybe that it's young kids. But it's like, yeah, I don't care, because what is the alternative to dislikes? I mean, think about that for a minute. What you're really asking an audience to do, or a streamer or a politician or a entertain, whatever the job is to do, is if they get dislikes, you want me to change. Because if I care about your dislikes, then basically what I'm asking you is, what can I say to you to get you to like me? Why do I care if you like me? I'm not doing this to be liked. I'm doing this to express ideas I think are relevant. I'm doing this to connect with people who either can educate me about new things that I haven't thought about, which has happened. Even though I still think Gamergate was a nightmare, I very much had a great conversation with that guy the other night. And I was like, oh, well, there were some good things that they actually did do. Not a lot, but the ones he mentioned sounded pretty goddamn good. But yes, please keep disliking the stream, Shin. I don't really care. Okay. So let me bring in, I'll bring in everybody. I'm not trying to ignore people, but I'm just trying to bring in somebody I don't know on the off chance they can educate me in a way that is, or the audience in a way that we haven't heard yet. This is a guy named Rice Clark. I don't think I've talked to him before. Rice, are you there?
Hello.
Hey man, what's going on?
I'm going to try and be civil about this.
Don't be civil, just don't be an asshole, but you can be passionate. Go.
I fundamentally disagree with a lot of your points.
Okay, tell me why. Let's take one at a time. Give me a point you disagree with.
Okay. So, the first one being about crunch and how, initially in the video that Pat brought up on Twitter, he talks about how you tell people to stop buying games based on crunch. Or more specifically, you tell them to, what was the phrase it was used?
Shut the fuck up.
Shut the fuck up about crunch.
If you have a problem with crunch, don't buy the game. That's what I say, yes.
And I say it depends on who's making the decisions about the crunch and the developer/publisher.
Why?
I believe you can support someone through monetary gain. There can be multiple people in a company you support, and there can be one person in charge or one person that is causing this problem that you want to speak out about and get rid of.
You're absolutely right, but do you understand that that might be noble, but it's not functional? So I'll give you a great example. Take a look at Bobby Kotick. Bobby Kotick, in my opinion, is one of the most evil people working in video games. Okay? But that man makes his shareholders so much fucking money that it doesn't matter how, what's the guy's name? Jason Schreier could write a 10-volume series on all the ways Bobby Kotick isn't the nicest guy in the world. And guess what? He's not going anywhere. Because people
I'm aware of that, but
right. So how do you fix? What you're suggesting is, yes, but those poor slobs working.
The system that this is allowed to occur in.
I got no problem on that. How do you do it?
Not have completely rampant capitalism within the system.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree. Talk to me about how you do it.
And I'm gonna ask you, how exactly do we communicate to people that this is a problem when we want the system to change for the better if we're supposed to shut the fuck up about crunch?
I didn't say
How
shut
do
the
we
fuck up
communicate?
about crunch. I said shut the fuck up about crunch if you're going to basically not put your money where your mouth is. If you're going to sit there, here's what I'll say, man. I'll give you a caveat because I don't think
Paradoxical.
no, it's not. I'm giving you a caveat.
It is. 'Cause I
I'm
don't
giving
agree
you a
with you.
caveat. I'm giving you a caveat. Give me a moment. I'm agreeing with what you said. So yes, if you said, here are your options, pal. Shut the fuck up about crunch if you're going to buy the game, or shut the fuck up about. Wait, let me finish. God damn, man, come on, baby. Or shut the fuck up about crunch if you're going to buy the game, but you are not going to then go and make it very clear that it's this individual at the company that you have a problem with. It's not all of the people who had to crunch. I'm down with that. I don't know how you would do that, and I don't know how you would identify those people. Go ahead.
So earlier,
Elia?
some people stating earlier. I'm sorry, that is my fucking British accent.
I don't mind your accent, but I don't know what you're saying.
So earlier.
Earlier. Yep.
Earlier on.
Gotcha.
You mentioned when people were bringing it up in the comments, I believe on the YouTube comments.
Yeah.
People were saying that it is often a management problem, and I agree with this. I think a lot of the time management is the one that is making the decisions of whether or not people should work certain amounts of hours. Sometimes someone working in a company doesn't want to crunch or does. Regardless, I believe for the disadvantages it gives in both their life, their health, physical, mental, they should never be forced to crunch or even coerced in any way. This causes them problems. Some people, I agree, are passionate and want to work more, but for their betterment of their own lives should not ever be coerced or made to. Sometimes they should also be forced to not. This is how you keep people in society from hurting themselves. There are things people do that will cause self-harm and harm to people around them.
Okay. So let me be clear on
This
this.
is what I believe.
I don't agree with all of that, but if you're basically saying, do I think unregulated capitalism is out of control? Yes. Do I think we should have more social safety nets and have a kinder society? Absolutely. Anybody who watches my stream or reads my Twitch or whatever the fuck it is I do knows that. Okay. But right now, then really you shouldn't be calling into my stream. You should be phone banking for the very few politicians that are not in the back pockets of these corporations. You should be trying to figure out, I don't know what country you're in, but at least if you're an American and you agree with this guy, you should be on the phone 24/7. That's impossible. But you know, you should have at least called a couple of people already about the fact that yesterday Mitch McConnell basically doesn't even allow the Senate to discuss whether there should be a better voting system in America. Okay, there's a lot of things about what you say I agree with. But ultimately, though, the one thing I don't agree with you on, though, is the management part. I do agree with you on the management part, but I've been in video games long enough to tell you that if you're a bad manager, you do not last very long. Sometimes you do because you're political, but more often than not, you don't. The managers I have worked with are some of the best in the business, and we still had crunch. And it wasn't because they scheduled poorly. It was because we don't know what the game is until it's like being an archaeologist. It's like you said you would discover the lost ark on Tuesday. It's like, well, yeah, but I don't really know where it is. It's somewhere out here. And they're like, okay. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. I would agree with you, though, that if the companies want to find a way to compensate the people who crunch better, great. But ultimately, they don't have to, because there are more people that are willing to come in. Think about it. I mean, it really isn't this. It's simple, but it's good. Okay, let me finish. Well, it is my show. But that said, though, and I am answering your question, and it's not a simple question. But think about it. Okay, well, actually, you know what? Go ahead. I'll finish later. You go ahead. What do you want to say, bud?
My response to you about that would simply be that, how do I put this into words?
I don't know.
You say that no one was forced to do it back then.
Well,
working in that way.
Oh, I didn't say that. I did not say that.
Okay, well, do you say the phrase again? Because you spoke a lot after it, and I'm trying to remember pieces you say.
Okay.
So I can respond to each point individually.
Okay, so what
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's hard to respond to you if you just keep using roll-on sentences.
Okay, I appreciate the attempt at a slight, but let's get past that. Okay.
I'm not trying to slight.
All right, fair enough. Let's get past it. All right, fair enough. Then that. Okay, fair enough. Okay. So, are you asking me to restate what I said about when I was doing crunch?
When you were doing crunch. Yes.
Okay. When I was doing crunch, there was an expectation that people got their work done. I don't ever remember anybody saying, if you don't do this, you will get fired. What I do remember is that we had a lot of crunch. A lot of it came from the fact that we did not know what the game was. We were inventing a universe, a story, a genre, on a brand new engine that had never been used for anything but a racing game. So there was a lot of unknowns that we were doing, okay? And what I know is we were always compensated for the crunch. We got days off. We got time off after the game. And Sony regularly paid out bonuses to people who worked on the game.
So here's what I propose on that.
Okay?
I don't believe crunch is in any way helping you get those results better.
Have you worked in games before?
No, I've not worked in games, but I've worked in other creative industries.
Such as what?
Filmmaking.
But okay, but you've worked in filmmaking on a professional set where they have unions and overtime.
Yes.
Okay, so you've never had overtime on a set?
Overtime? No.
Well, there's plenty of overtime here in America. I don't know if you're working in England, but keep going.
So I would simply pose that I don't believe any further benefit comes from working crunch. I don't believe people work better through crunch. I believe if you were to regiment the time better, there are recorded examples of this, of AAA developers that have not had anyone come out saying they crunch, that managed to produce similar, if not the same results.
Can you give me can you give me an example?
Well, I would try and clear Insomniac now, but you would say they might be lying.
No, I didn't say that. What I said is you've got two people on the team. You didn't. You haven't. And when I literally asked,
Hades is another good one.
Who?
People have given examples.
No, give me what? Who?
I said Hades is another good one.
Hades is not a triple. Hades is not a AAA game. Hades is an indie game with about 23 people, utilizing basically an isometric camera system that these guys have been making since Bastion. It's a great game, by the way. And if you want to propose the fact, if audiences would stop demanding the level of production value and the level of new, and just focused on gameplay, fuck, baby, I'm with you. I wish that. That's the brilliance. That's the brilliance of the medium.
I'm telling you, I don't believe crunch ever produces better results.
But you're not offering any. You're not offering any specifics. I'm telling you, if I can point.
Specifics is stop doing crunch.
Okay, but what I'm confused by is if I point to The Last of Us, if I point to God of War, if I point to Halo Infinite, or if I point to The Witcher 3, if I point to any of these games where they did crunch on, if they didn't do crunch, it would be a lesser game, right? You agree with that?
How can you prove that if you don't have a comparable for it?
But
there is no.
Yes, there is.
One of those examples you just gave. There is no version of that game that exists that wasn't on crunch, because these companies have doing it for so long that it's become systemic. I have experience and you don't. I can show you literally, if I got it from my chair, I could show you CDs, because we burned on CDs back in the day, of God of War, which was like at 6 months or 6 weeks after alpha. That's an unfinished version of the game.
It's
not an alternate version of the game that was completed without crunch.
I
understand that. You see the benefits of crunch without actually looking at the alternatives that produce them.
Yeah.
Like, we have examples of work ethics in many countries that involve them having less work hours, but more regimented breaks that allow them to get work done better.
Give me an example.
Like, Norway is a good example. They reduced their work rate down from the average of 8 hours of work per day and still produce the same amount of efficiency in workload in a lot of industrial sectors. There are many examples.
Wait. What creative products are you referring to that were made out of Norway in that system?
I'm going to Google it now, so I'll actually have a source.
Yeah.
I will try.
Just tell me, though. I don't need to read it. I believe you. I mean, was it a movie? Was it a game? Was it an album? What did they put out in Norway that made you say, But while you're looking for that, what I will say regarding to no product has ever, what I can tell you is the reason God of War crunched and the reason schedules slip is that you are able to look at it. It's like, well, if we ship on time or we ship without crunch, we're not going to have these two bosses and we're going to have to cut these levels. Right. So, and that's going to be a lesser product. I can tell you that.
Okay, but you've begun this with the precedent that they have a date already set, and that there are already expectations. And
of course,
it's management that sets these expectations from the start.
So what would you suggest management do when they don't set expectations?
Give them more time, regiment it better. Don't announce a release date before you know when you can finish it without crunching. There are solutions that exist.
There are not the solutions you're offering. The release date being announced doesn't mean anything. Nobody cares. Companies would prefer not to slip games, but it's not like, oh no, we've upset Reset Era or NeoGAF because we slipped. No one cares about that. Okay, but it is a budget.
No one cares about release dates.
No, they do, but the release dates are not tied to that. They're tied to budgets. They say, look, marketing and sales have looked at the design for the Doctor Who game. Okay,
so they're tied to budgets.
They're tied to budgets, and they say, this is how much we think the game can make. We're going to roll the dice because we could get lucky, but we think if you make it for $80 million, even if it's just, a little over, we can be profitable. And that budget determines.
Can I tell you where they could find more budget?
Sure.
Not having to pay people pointless overtime and crunch.
They don't pay overtime and crunch.
They can. That you just said overtime exists in the industry.
In movies, in movies, in union.
It can exist in both.
How can it exist?
Depends entirely on the company.
Talk to me about how can overtime exist, and how can you tell Sony to start paying overtime?
Everywhere is America, dude.
Yes, that's right. But
the United States isn't the only country on the planet. Jesus.
No. But you're not as smart as you think you are. Listen to me. I'm going to educate you.
I never claimed to be.
You are, if you're basically assuming.
Subject now, dude.
I'm not. I'm trying to talk to you about not every country being America, right? So let me speak to that. The very reason American game developers are going to continue to struggle with unionizing is because they can basically, Sony can go, okay, well, we'll go to Taiwan. We'll go to Hong Kong. We'll go to Malaysia and get the work done because they're not unionized, right?
Have you ever considered why they haven't done that so far?
They haven't done that what?
Have you ever considered why they haven't done that so far?
Oh, so far. They have. Outsourcing is a huge thing. But basically, right now, the value of the quality of work that they get and the ability to manage that quality of work by having people on site or at least, close. Did someone tickle your testicles? What was funny?
No, not really.
Okay. So the value of it for them is higher than not outsourcing certain jobs. But I guarantee you, those jobs will be outsourced the minute they become too expensive. Companies outsource all the time. Why would you think they don't?
I do think they do.
Okay. All right. Well, buddy, I don't. I got it. We're just going to agree to disagree, okay?
I'll still have one more thing to bring up once we're done with this.
Well, okay. Go ahead, real quick.
I'm going to lay it out as flat as I can, and I can already tell what your response will be, so I'll just say the whole thing.
All right, hang on 1 second, though. Hang on 1 sec. Seriously, I'm not being a dick. I got to tell my kids something. Don't go anywhere, please.
How's the YouTube chat doing? Yeah. It's like 1 a.m. here, by the way. I'm tired. Actually, I said the United States, Chinaski. I didn't say America.
All right, go ahead.
You brought it up for about 3 minutes at the start, but I'm going to bring it up again.
Yep.
Pat also brought it up in one of his earlier tweets.
Okay.
Many ex-developers working under Cliffy B came out making the same claims, all of which were corroborated between each other, which remained consistent, that Cliffy B claimed he would pay them X amount of severance, and he did not. Cliffy later went on to say that he did pay them, to which many more employees spoke out and said he was lying. I'm going to ask you, why should we believe Cliffy B's inconsistent side over the story of the ex-employees?
Okay, so my answer to that is what I said before. I'm not saying you should. What I am saying is that what Cliff said was he paid, what I heard and what I read was Cliff paid 3 weeks of severance. Somebody in the chat said Cliff lied and said he paid 3 months of severance. Okay. I don't have the answer. I didn't know that. But what I said was, if it turns out Cliff did lie, and I had Cliff on the show 3 weeks ago, I would have asked him about that. He's also going to come back on the show, and I'll ask him about that then. Because I agree that's not a good look, and I would be curious what that was about. But I don't agree with that. I'm not saying I don't agree with how much severance he paid, although obviously the more you can pay, the better. But I definitely don't agree with lying about it, but I don't have the data on that. So you basically have 3 points of data. You have he paid 3 weeks, he paid 3 months, or he paid nothing. My understanding from the people in the chat, the text chat, is that he did pay 3 weeks. Now, if you're saying no, there's data that says he paid nothing, or are you reading it right? Are you saying he lied about what he paid, or he lied about paying anything?
I'm saying he claimed he would pay them more than he did.
Right. Okay, so we're agreeing with that. He said he paid 3 months, that he actually paid 3 weeks, right?
He underpaid them severance, yes.
Well, I didn't say underpaid. That's your
If you claim you're going to pay someone a certain amount and then you pay them less,
no.
that is the definition of underpaying.
No, that's not the definition of underpaying. If you tell the individual you're going to pay them and you pay them less, that's underpaying. If you tell the press, I paid them 6 months and you only paid them 6 days, that's not underpaying, that's lying.
Many of the ex-developers came out saying he lied about how much he would pay them and then paid them less.
Show me the article that says he lied about how much he would pay them versus...
All of the developers' tweets about it, man. All of the developers that
All right.
worked for...
Right, you're really not helping yourself. Basically, what I'm literally telling you. I want you to compare and contrast this conversation, sir. I'm literally telling you, if Cliff did that, and it sounds like he did, not only do I think it's bad, not only do I think it's a lie, but when I have him on next, I will ask him about it. Okay, I'm not fighting you on this, but when I ask you to clarify, you're like, ay, man, go look up the tweets. I'm literally asking you.
Because I gave you the sources. It's the ex-developers of the company on Twitter. These are the people
Those
that
aren't
made the
sources.
claim.
Send me a fucking link, and more importantly, explain to me, are they saying, because the words matter in this case, are they saying Cliff lied about what he said he paid us, or are they saying Cliff lied to us about what he promised to pay us? They're both bad, by the way, but you're not clarifying. And if you are, I would like to see.
We both agree what he did was wrong.
Sure. Well, if he did it, I agree. It was bad. It was wrong. Yes, 100%. But now you're kind of moving the goalpost, but that's okay.
No, that's the best I'm gonna get. Like, what do you want from me?
A good faith argument. Good. See you, buddy. All right. Look, man. I'll bring anybody in who wants to talk, but you got to give me a break, man. I'm willing to go to battle with you guys in a respectful way. Okay. I'm going to bring on just all the regulars. I will bring you on, but I want to get some of these new people in the hopes that maybe they have something to say that we're not really getting. But and just because you're regular doesn't mean you agree with me, of course. Okay. This is a guy named Sam Picos.
Hello.
Up? What's up, man?
Hi. I've been a long-time listener to Pat, and I can't really speak for him, but
sure,
I can kind of speak towards his resentment towards Cliffy B.
Okay.
He's been kind of a braggart. Had a lot of really spicy takes throughout the years.
Okay.
Maybe more so in the early 2000s than lately, but there's just, I feel like, a really deep-seated resentment towards him, and that could be conflating a lot of bad practices, real, imagined. I don't know. I don't have any sources for anything that Cliffy B may have done. All I can say is that there's a lot of people who just don't like Cliffy B.
Okay.
Is that fair?
I think it is absolutely fair that there was a time when Cliff handled himself publicly in a way that, turned off a lot of people, especially in today's day and age. You have to remember back then, and again, I not everybody acted this way, but, there was a time when that was sort of celebrated and that was rewarded. But yeah, I can see how now, and even then to an extent, people looked at Cliff and said, dude, you're a braggart. And, you know, your attitude is kind of overwhelming, and it's kind of something I don't like. I think Cliff would admit that. I think Cliff has admitted that. Cliff has said, he says, look, I've grown up. I'm not, 26 years old anymore. I assume everybody on the call or anybody here that's 26, 28, younger has never made a fool of themselves. But, Cliff has openly admitted, I've been to therapy. I didn't like this failure that I just went through. I learned a lot. He said he was arrogant and he was wrong to push his politics and lawbreakers and all of this stuff. So I'm not suggesting that, I'm not suggesting that Pat or whoever doesn't have a right to have of course he has a right regardless, but I'm not suggesting he doesn't have a right to have a negative view of Cliff Bleszinski, but I would say that, he is judging a guy from, a while ago, not the guy who was on my show 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, I realized in watching a smash cut of a lot of the stuff that people have issue with, the stuff that Cliffy B said in the past, it's all really old stuff. And I do appreciate you giving me an update on, because honestly, I just came in from Twitter. I didn't really know much of either side of the argument. I just wanted some clarifications.
Yeah, no worries.
And it seems like Pat, I would have appreciated if Pat came on, because nobody could speak for Pat better than himself, but I appreciate you giving me an update on Cliffy B and how he has acknowledged some of his issues and how he has changed.
Absolutely. You
That's
got
all
it,
I
buddy.
have.
All right, man. Thanks for calling, bud. I appreciate it. All right, there we go. Let me bring in CS9. CS9, you're on. What's up, pal?
Oh, hello, am I on?
Yeah, you're on. What's up, bud?
Oh, hello. Thank you very much. I would like to discuss one particular subject with you, if that's okay.
Okay.
How does it feel knowing that God of War was a fucking terrible game?
Which one?
The original.
I have feelings about it, but I don't have that feeling. Why would I? It won game of the year. One of the reasons I'm able to sit here on my butt, years after having an actual real job, is that it made a lot of people happy, made a lot of people money. But what was it you didn't like about it?
The main problem I have with it was hold on a second, let me mute the stream. The main problem I have with it is just, well, I think it's just the kind of overwrote the kind of a lot of the sort of Greek mythology sort of aspects of it were kind of very mediocre. A lot of the efforts that were put in were kind of whatever. I mean,
I don't know. What do you mean? Give me some specifics. What about? So just so you know, do you know who Edith Hamilton is or was?
These nuts.
No. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let me bring on my favorite part about that though. Is D's nuts is like, really? You jumped through all those hoops and D's nuts was the best you got? That's the best you got? Come on now. I think you're talking to D's nuts. Come on. At least offer up the ligma. Then I would say, what's the ligma? All right, here we go. This is Bayoma. Bayoma, go, bud. Bayoma, are you there? All right, I'm going to bring in somebody else. Bayoma's there, but he's not talking. Oh, there you go. Are you there, buddy?
Oh, yeah, I'm here.
What's
Sorry,
up?
I was
I don't
on
care.
the stream. You're a little bit behind.
No problem. What's going on, man?
So I just wanted to come on and give a little perspective as someone who has worked in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
I've done QA multiple times through contract work.
Okay.
And I think this whole situation's been blown really out of proportion. I think there's a lot of people on both sides who don't really understand the whole situation.
Okay.
I think a big part of it is there are just gamers in here out shouting their side's perspective.
Not to sort of be I just want to be clear on this because I don't know you, so you may be coming to me totally fresh. I have worked in the industry, correct?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Keep going.
Yeah, no, I wasn't saying you specifically. I was saying more the YouTube chat.
Okay.
But a big part of what I dealt with doing QA testing, I really didn't do that much crunching.
Mm-hmm.
It was very obvious there was a lot of people on the team who were crunching. But the biggest thing I think that the problem in the industry is right now is that people being put into these roles not expecting it, and games ending up being worse off than they were before, like crunches were to take place.
All right, I want to make sure because you kind of said two things. There's being put into these situations not expecting it. That I think you and I agree on. I think if you go into a job and you have no idea and you ask point blank or they don't offer what kind of studio they are, that's on them, and that's a real fucking problem. But the other part, though, about the product not being as good, I mean, every project I've worked on or been peripherally involved with, just even being at Sony, those extensions, I was in these meetings where we talked about why we needed these extensions. They were always, it wasn't because it's like, yeah, well, because Fred's not working hard enough. It was like, oh shit, we really want to have split screen co-op or something, right? So what is it that, what games have you QA'd on where you've experienced something where the crunch has actually made the game worse?
Well, so when I did QA, I did mostly QA through, I don't know if I should say the company, but
it was a contract company, which meant you got overtime if they did overtime. But my guess would be, at least how it works at Sony, is that the contract QA guys are not the only QA guys. They're the majority, but there's also QA guys and managers that are full-time. So when they do have to crunch QA, they try to get most of that on the shoulders of the people that are salaried and not the contractors, because they do have to pay overtime, correct?
100%, yeah. So the way it worked in my situation is basically, to me, it was sort of like an internship. I would do it at any other company. I was kind of sit home at the end of the day while the full-time people stayed and did the extra work.
Right.
So like I said, I personally didn't experience it. And what I wanted to come on and say to really kind of level the bad blood is sometimes, crunch, I think, is necessary, even though it shouldn't be. But otherwise things aren't going to get done in the long run.
Yeah. At least at the level you want them.
Exactly. And I mean, I come into this stream as, someone who was a fan of Pat originally. I came in mostly just to see what the discussion would be, and what was going on and what all the hatred and rile and commotion was.
Yeah, I just so you're clear, I don't have a hatred towards Pat. I don't know the guy. I literally I saw a cartoon picture of him. That's all I know about him is his avatar.
Yeah, and I think that's what a lot of it coming here is no one either really knows each other, so there's a lot of animosity between, oh, well, this is the picture of the person I have now, and it's so blown out of proportion that this person is a hard slave driver and this person's a lax, nothing ever gets done because they don't want to work.
Right. Well, yeah, no, I mean, I've always been, you can go back to my very first video on crunch or unionizing, and I've said the same thing over and over. I'm not opposed to unionizing, but you have to be smart about it. Let me tell you something. You know how easy it would be to put out a video if a lot of people care about ratios or for some stupid reason. Don't ask me why. But let's assume I wanted to have a real popular video. I could put a video about how much unions are important and we have to shut down the man and companies are bad and blah, 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 and everybody would love me. But the minute I put out a video that says, I'm down with unions, but can you explain to me practically how it would work? It's either crickets or you get downvoted because people think you don't want unions. I'm like, I do want unions, but you have to figure out the problems or otherwise you're just virtue signaling. You know what I mean?
I mean, I do. I totally understand that. I think a big problem with the issue right now, like you said, is the money hunger in the bigger studios, AAA studios. I think a lot of that is driving, that sort of crunch on full AAA titles to be more, or let me rephrase this better, a totally unproductive assignment. The IGDA actually did a really good case study on crunching. It's a super old article, but I think a lot of it still applies today, that once you break that 60-hour work week for months and months at a time, productivity goes down. And I think we saw a lot of that with Cyberpunk. That game was extended and extended and extended, and eventually the team is so worn out that nobody wants to come to work.
My guess is Cyberpunk is absolutely one of those situations where you do have a bad management problem. I don't think Cyberpunk is the same thing as Naughty Dog's crunch, Santa Monica's crunch, or Ghost of Tsushima's crunch. I think, or Nintendo's crunch. I think the Cyberpunk thing is indicative of a company that's got some serious fucking problems when it comes to managing. The same thing with Dying Light 2. But yeah, I hear you. All right, Bay, thank you so much for calling. I appreciate it, buddy.
Yep.
Somebody in the chat was saying that the reason that Patrick didn't come on was because he didn't want to basically like do something about charity. Like he's like, oh, he was like, I don't want to, belittle a charity just for view, something like that. The charity only came up, just so we're clear. The charity only came up because at first I said, hey, can we talk about this and let's stream? And he's like, no, I don't want to give you eyeballs. I said, okay, well, let's do it on your channel. And how about we do it for charity? That way I'm not making any money off of it. It's on your channel. I won't make any subs off of it. I'm literally looking to have a conversation with you. So the charity was not for clout. Again, all you need to do is watch my streams. We did a charity for Crohn's disease, or I was on a charity for Crohn's disease where we gave away God of War stuff a couple of weeks ago. Before that, we did one for what the fuck was that? We've done like 4 charity streams. Then I was on Alana Pierce's charity stream for Among Us. So, yeah, like this guy Blutzwave says, I wanted to guilt him into views. I assure you, I wasn't trying to guilt him. I was literally trying to assuage his concerns, which are, I don't want to give you a discussion, Jaffe, because you're doing it for views or you're doing it for money or whatever. And I was like, oh, okay, well, let's take both those off the table. Let's do it on your channel so the views don't benefit me. And so you would have to go out of your way to find my channel to subscribe. And let's take the money part off the table. Let's give the money to charity. That way it's clear this is not about a money grab. This is about let's do something good, even though we may very well disagree. That's all I was saying. All right, I'm going to bring in Caveman. Caveman, what's up, baby? Go. Are you there? Caveman.
Yeah, I'm here.
What's up?
How's it going? Just a couple things that I saw in the chat and stuff that are like just kind of really wrong. Like somebody wrote, don't do overtime, just like hire more people.
Uh-huh.
And first of all, that's just not how business financials work. Like you can't just put a salaried employee on the books and that just doesn't work.
No.
They budget per month. So for whoever said that, it's just wrong.
Well, let's just be specific too. The reason it doesn't work, it does work in things like QA sometimes, but you're not going to be able to say, hey, this level's taking a long time to design. Let's throw 3 more people at it. It takes months, sometimes more, to find a level designer that understands what the game is trying to achieve and has the right creative sensibilities for that individual game. That would be like saying the movie's taking too long to make. Let's just throw some more actors at it. And it's like, well, that's not what we're doing. So that's why it doesn't work, by the way.
Yeah. And the other thing that's really big is that pretty much everybody, well, I should say everybody, there's contract workers like that last guy that called in or whatever, but a lot of these guys they're all salary. So the overtime thing, it's a different thing. Like they're not getting overtime. They might get bonuses if they're lucky, but it's all salary. So people need to realize that as well.
Well, the guy who just called in, was a contract worker. So the reason they sent him home at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock was because they didn't want to pay him overtime. We had the same thing. All of Sony's QA and some of their other, not all, but a lot of Sony's QA and a lot of their other departments are contract. And so when those people have to work later than 5 or 6 or whatever the schedule is, it's a big fucking deal. It's a big fucking deal to keep them there. And people, a lot of executives have to get involved to say, are we going to pull this trigger? But yeah, you're right. When they're salaried, it's more about these people. We want to make sure they're happy and we keep them on board. So how do we compensate for the fact that we're asking them to work on the weekend? Well, at Sony, a lot of it was, let's make sure they get 3 days off, Monday through Wednesday, if they had to work 2 weekends in a row, or let's make it up for them with more bonuses, or let's buy them all places. Whatever it is that the person needed, it would be sometimes individually and sometimes it would be team debated and decided. But yeah, I mean, the challenge is, and maybe this is sort of my problem, but the challenge is, a lot of these people who are who have a voice, and I have no problem with people having a voice, of course, but they don't have any data, right? So they're kind of, it's kind of like, you know, you're talking to people who are sort of understanding the issue for the first time, but they're missing a lot of information, but they still have that same level of anger and vitriol and passion. And sometimes it's kind of hard to debate and discuss with those people.
Yeah, well, I think another thing that you kind of just talked about a little bit that happens is that most of this crunch happens with these AAA developers, but they get treated very well. Like, if you go to a AAA studio, I mean, a lot of them have, like, they'll have free, you know, cafeterias. They'll have,
yeah, but that,
they'll
I mean,
take them on trips. They'll, like, it's
sure,
but like, and they do this in movies too.
They
so, like,
yes, they do it on purpose. They do it, and again, that doesn't make up for it though. But you're right, they do. Now, I will disagree with you that there's a lot of AAA on indies as well, by the way. But you're right. At the big companies, that's one of the things they use to entice you. Any company, not just gaming companies. If you ever go to like an advertising firm like Chiat Day, they've got a basketball court and they've got, you know, a full-time 24/7 kitchen staff that will make you whatever you want. That doesn't make up for the fact that you don't get to go home and see your family. But
it's true. But it does have to be said that, like, it's just like, so like if you go work on a movie set, first of all, if you're on location, your days are 15 hours, which is, you know, that's pretty crazy for people that have families and stuff. But they take care of you in terms of your breakfast, lunch. You save money that way. So like, and also you get paid a lot. Like if you're in AAA, those guys are pulling down pretty good money. So like
a lot of them, yeah.
So like it's one of those things where people are talking about this ideology of crunch is bad, which is true, and I think you agree. I think everybody agrees that crunch is not. Oh, I shouldn't say bad. It's just crunches are not good, but it's not. It's something that if you want to finish the game, you sometimes have to do. It's not. Nobody's pro crunch. You're just not anti crunch. It's like, this is a terrible comparison, but it's people that are like against. Actually, I'm not gonna say it. It's one of those things that it's not. Nobody's pro crunch. It's just, you know, anti crunch.
Right. I mean, I do think there are teams that say we want to work our asses off and make the biggest and best thing that's ever been made. And I think that's fine. But you have to be honest about what your team is. Turbo Bastard says, why slave yourself just to make a corporation more money and not get any of the bonuses when the game makes billions? Yeah. No one disagrees with you. All right. Thanks, Caveman. Appreciate it, buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Turbo, nobody disagrees with you. But no one's asking for that. If you work for a company that crunches and you don't feel that you are being respected for your talent and your time, then why would you work there? Absolutely. Abso-fucking-lutely. But you act like you're saying that like it's a gotcha. Like, I don't know many people that are being asked to do that. I think most companies, you know, going in, you know what level of crunch they offer. All right, this is a guy, Art O'Fleck. I think that's his name. Is this you? Art O'Fleck, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
What's up?
So my question, since we've talked a lot about the budgetary concerns and just crunch in general stemming from that, I'd like to ask about just the development process in general and how that's changed.
Okay.
To alleviate chat a little bit, I'm just a freelance guy. I'm just some schmuck trying to make it. I've worked on a couple of mobile games. There's a game on Steam that is published. Those mobile games were never published.
What's your game on Steam?
It's called Grid Legion Voyage. I didn't get paid for that game. It was a bad time.
Okay.
But when I was in school, I was learning under Brad Furminger, who is a lead designer at Silicon Knights, and I'm in Canada. And this was a little bit after Silicon Knights was no longer a thing. They were history at this point.
Okay.
There's a lot of vernacular at this time. This is back in like 2012 of things like Scrum, the Agile method, sprints, this kind of development process work.
Yep.
What do you think has changed since then that might either alleviate or contribute to crunch culture in general? Like, has game development actually advanced in a way that would alleviate a lot of these concerns that people are having?
So, to some extent, yes, but to a large extent, no, right? So, crunch, okay, there's management issues. When there's management issues, that's an easy thing to find and recognize. And if you're not working for a shitty company, that's an easy thing to get rid of. Okay. But if you're talking about crunch that comes because the team is trying to find a competitive edge on their game, whether that is through gameplay or storytelling or graphics or some kind of interesting network mode or whatever it is, those are things that you can't, all you know is it's like leaving your garage in a car and going, I want to go to New York, and you're in California and you're like, I have a rough map. I know it's east. And I know it's roughly going to take about 4 days to get there, but you don't really know much else, right? When you're trying to sort of, be on that edge to give yourself that competitive edge, that's when things happen where you can't foresee. And yes, a good manager will schedule that in, but you can only schedule uncertainty to a degree, and then you're kind of still going to get lost in the woods. And at that point, you look at your corporation, you look at your bosses and say, what is our goal here? Is the goal to ship, what's going to move, the deadline, the quality, or the scope? And every company has a different answer, but customers have consistently made it clear that they will pay with their money, obviously, they'll pay with their money and their time to buy things that are bleeding edge in any or all of those categories. And so, the biggest way to alleviate it is to learn who crunches and stop buying those products, because ultimately they're not doing it because they're assholes. They're doing it because they're greedy. They're greedy, but they're not assholes necessarily. They want to make money.
Right. The other thing, it's like talking about Silicon Knights, like they were a major Canadian game developer.
And they were terrible, right? They been
Yeah, with all the shit with Dennis Dyack and whatever. I'm sure I don't need to get into that, but the other thing I wanted to bring up are like, what are standard practices? Do studios talk to each other about, like, hey, this pathway that we took worked for us, but because games are in general very uniquely developed, like every game has its different end goal.
Yep.
Is there some kind of method in the industry? People are talking to each other about what makes things easier, for lack of a better term.
Well, the easiest thing. Okay, so look, I'm not saying what these people are saying in the chat. I've seen the same articles they've seen about Insomniac not crunching. Although again, they're talking about two people that came out and said they didn't crunch. And when I reached out to Naughty Dog, they didn't say, "Oh yes, we don't crunch." They kind of gave me some nice word salad, which I think Naughty Dog's Insomniac is a wonderful company. Ted Price is a nice, kind guy, and they try to have the best culture they can. However, what I will tell you is, out of all the AAA games I've seen that probably wouldn't have to crunch, I would probably say Ratchet and Clank: A Rift Apart, if that's what it's called, which I played and I loved, makes the most sense because, as I said, It's going off a template that they have made over and over and over for many, many years. Now, is there innovation in it? Yes. Is it amazing looking? Sure. But ultimately, it's the same game. And in that's one way you could do it. But you even saw it in the reviews, man. You saw I can point you to reviews where the reviewers say, in more flowery language, they get a pass because this is next-gen hardware and it looks amazing. But if they go down this road again and it's just a samey, things are going to be a little bit different next time in terms of how people respond to this game. I'm not saying I agree or disagree, but I do think the fan base is rabid for new and cutting edge and bleeding edge. And so ultimately, unless you are going to become a mobile game company, which is fine, they make more money than console games, or unless you are going to try to be a Steam kind of hit like an Among Us or a Fall Guys, that's the business you're in. If you want to be a game developer, go develop different kinds of games, but to go to Naughty Dog and act surprised when you crunch, I mean, don't you think at that point you're kind of a moron?
I suppose so. Again, I'm just kind of a fledgling guy here. I really just wanted to hear from a developer about.
Well, okay, so here's what I will tell you. Let me ask you this: what is your ultimate goal in the industry? You want to work in the business. What is your ultimate goal? Or you do work in the business. Where do you want to end up?
I want to design a character people give a shit about in some game of some scale.
But as a writer, as a designer, as an artist, what?
As an artist, yes. Sorry,
Okay.
I probably should have mentioned that.
Okay.
I want to design a character that people like sticks in people's memories. I guess that's kind of my thing, and it doesn't really matter personally to me if it's the huge AAA budget game or
Right.
this AA term that we've been hearing a lot of, this
Okay.
kind of mid-budget project that doesn't really look the best, but
Okay.
might honestly have some cool gameplay stuff. Sure.
Right. So I here's what I would ask you then. I would ask you, do you care about crunching in your own personal life? Are you willing or okay to crunch, or you would prefer not to?
As someone who has to make my own hours, right? I'm not in my 30s and I have back pain, so I have to kind of learn to manage that kind of aspect better about myself, I think. And I think that's really easy as to be in a studio with other passionate people and just kill yourself over it. Like,
Well,
how do you make yourself stop?
Well, okay, but the reason I'm asking is ultimately because your end goal, which is I want to make a character people love and care about, that exists across the spectrum of video games, right? Hades, right. I think the Hades characters are brilliant. I love the Hades characters. I think a lot of people do. And there's a lot, same thing with what's happening at Double Fine if you look at the Costume Quest characters. So my point is that you, because that is your end goal, you have an opportunity to seek out companies that treat their employees in a way that you find acceptable. But if your goal is, I want to be the next Cory Barlog, I want to be the next Neil Druckmann, I want to direct these massive $230, $280 million video games, then I think ultimately you don't really have much of an option unless you're willing to sort of, it's kind of like you want to be a boxer. Okay, you want to box for a hobby, or do you want to be the heavyweight champ of the world? You want to be the heavyweight champ of the world? Sorry, you got to get up all the time and put on the Rocky theme and fucking work out. That's kind of how it works. All right, man. I appreciate the call, bud. Thank you, sir. Good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. This is a guy named Warloff. Is that it? Am I doing it right? Warloff, are you there? Warloff, where are you?
Oh, hey.
What's up, man?
I'm doing good. I've been watching your stream for like a little bit,
Thanks, man.
and there's just something weird about how earlier you were talking about not wanting crunch is similar to a dictatorship.
I'm not sure I follow. What?
You say...
Are you all right?
Yeah.
Are you nervous? Are you nervous or are you just struggling?
No, I'm a little nervous.
No, there's no need to be nervous. It's just us. It's just us talking. It's just us talking. Don't worry about it, buddy. So what's up?
Okay.
Go ahead.
I have a quote of what you said earlier about when you say AAA can't be made without crunch, then it shouldn't be made. Well, that would work if you live in a dictatorship.
Right. That's right. I understand now. Okay.
I'm just wondering what was how you got to that point.
Well, I got to that point because what I was saying is if you have capitalism and you have basically the version of democracy and equality we have under capitalism, there are always going to be people trying to build a more lucrative mousetrap. And unless you have a dictatorship or some kind of government that says everyone has to stop working at 6 o'clock and everyone can't be at work until 10 o'clock, unless you can kind of lay down these rules that are draconian like that, then ultimately there's always going to be a company out there, a startup or a big company with lots of resources that says, we're willing to cut corners. We're willing to go, whether it's an extra mile by the team that they don't have a problem with because they want to make greatness, or whether it's just a greedy company that says, we're going to crunch like motherfuckers, and if you don't do it, we're going to fire you. Either way, unless you have a rule in place that is a law, ultimately you're not going to be able to get rid of it. That's all I'm saying. That's why I said a dictatorship or something like, I wasn't being literal, like let's go make games in North Korea. I was just suggesting that unless you can put down such a draconian law you're going to have a real hard time forcing people like Bobby Kotick to go, oh, it looks like the guys who like that Pat guy on YouTube don't like Crunch. Okay, I'll fix it.
Okay. Well, that's all I had to say.
All right, man. I appreciate you calling in. Thanks, bud.
Thanks.
Of course. All right, this is George. Good Sir George. How you doing, buddy?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you great.
Hello. All right. So, sorry, just talking to Kira off the back in the chat room. So basically, the perspective I want to bring in here is I wanted to ask you about how things were for you and the team around you at Santa Monica specifically back in the God of War 1 days. So basically, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you guys, it started like with you pitching ideas to Sony about what game you wanted to do. It started with Dark Odyssey and all that, and then the idea got picked, right?
Yeah, I mean, we basically, I had about 20 ideas. I whittled them down to 3. I fleshed those out. I went around to the team, found out what they wanted to make. I took all that under advisement, and I was like, okay, let's make this one. And then we basically did a prototype. We pitched that to Phil Harrison. He said, great, keep going. We got a green light, and we were off to the races.
Correct. So at that point in the project, what year are we in? 2001, 2002?
That was probably like April 2001 when Phil said, yeah, go. I'm guessing it's been a while.
Okay. So in your head, kind of like in your headspace, if you have to guess, from April 2001 to March 2005, which is when I believe you guys launched,
yep.
How much time or how many percentage of those months do you believe you and the majority of the team worked overtime? Was it like the last third of development, halfway through development?
I mean, it was different for everyone. So like for me, it never stopped. I was working like, I mean, well, because when, I'm not really the best, barometer, because if you're the director, the lead designer, the writer, it becomes your life. And so I'm sitting there, giving my kid who was just born a bottle, and I'm designing, sketches for the Hydra level, right? So it's all consuming. But if you're like the lead programmer, the CTO, the lead artist, designers, I would say the way it worked was this. It was, we would have milestones. Let's say it would be milestone 6, and we would have a big whiteboard of all the things that we want to get done in milestone 6. Okay. And then as we started getting closer and closer every week, me and the producers and whatnot, and the leads would sit down and say, okay, we're not going to make this. We are going to make that. Maybe we can take this from the next milestone and put it here, or whatever. Or why is this milestone less important than that one? Is E3 coming up? Is there a big executive marketing show that we're building a milestone around? So that would decide what the remainder of 30% of that particular milestone looked like. And I would say 75, 80% of the time, I mean, I'm going to get a little weird here with percentages, but I would say 80% of the time we crunched the last 30% of the milestone. But I would also say that the last 7-8 months of the game, like right after E3, we probably crunched 80% of the time in general. So most people were there at 10 o'clock, 10:30, and most people went home at 8 o'clock, 9, 10 o'clock at night. But there was always compensation. There was always like, okay, you guys busted ass on this milestone. Let's take off, 3 days before the next milestone starts. And then that first lead up of the next milestone, except at the very end, was more, it was easier. Most people could go home, at 6 o'clock at night, but it ramps up towards the end. So, and again, we had Shannon Studstill, one of the best producers in the business. It wasn't like she was fucking a moron. She's phenomenal, but that's how we did it.
No, I understand the nature of it. I'm actually just asking out of curiosity of how the process itself works.
No, I'm not.
The gist that I'm getting of it.
Yeah.
The gist I'm getting of it. So let's say, for example, you have milestone 5, which takes 3 months to build in your mind, right? Let's say the first 2 months, you basically, the whole majority of the team besides you, which is you're always working on in your head, take basically regular hours or the time they feel like they can do in the studio and just apply that regular time. And then the last month, which would be the last third of that milestone, then basically everyone says, hey guys, we're almost there. But to get exactly where we want, so to the point where we don't have to cut anything, we are going to have to need you to maybe probably work a bit more. And then the whole team goes on board because, yeah, they want to finish it. Would that be a fair assessment?
I don't think always, but I certainly think that's an assessment that is accurate for a meaningful percentage of the work that we did.
Correct. Okay. So then my next question with this is, do you think that basically this sort of factored in crunch of like basically when you put a milestone in and like probably the very last bit of this milestone will have some crunch? Do you think this being baked into budgets and time allocations for release dates is good, or should games be now in 2021 and in the future be pursuing something where a bigger milestone project is outlined? Where, for example, let's say, Ratchet & Clank, the game that just came out.
Yeah.
Before the game even was in pre-production, someone was thinking about the game, saying like, okay, so this is going to be the beginning, this is going to be the end. I want this, this, and this in the game, and these are all the milestones, and I'm going to outline them now so that I have as minimal as possible crunch when we're actually doing the game. Do you think that should be more
all that happens? That's called pre-production. If you actually watch the Raising Kratos documentary, one of the challenges the last God of War had was that most of the team was working on, I don't remember if it was called Inner World or that science fiction game that Stig was directing. Yeah. And when that game got canceled, the main God of War 2018 team was still in pre-production going, we have to suddenly find work for these people, right? So no, there is absolutely a pre-production phase on most projects. Here's what I would say though. The two things that you can't really know is what you don't know. So you can sit there and you can say, this is our milestone schedule, or this is what we're going to get done. But if it turns out the battle mechanic for the Blades of Chaos doesn't work, then you have to fix that, and you have to figure out why it doesn't work and what's the fastest but still most commercial way. So part of it's that why it's hard. The other thing though is I have said over and over, I do think games like God of War, Last of Us, whatever, I do think, and maybe they do this, but you know, there is something to be said for making the whole game mechanically with very basic assets, with like a team of like 8 people, even if it's very rough and it just gives you the idea, and then stepping back and saying, is this good enough to actually complete? But again, it's not like these people haven't thought about that. There's always, managers are always trying, producers are always trying, tools creators are always trying to make the job easier and faster. But if you want a really good example of why this is so hard, all you have to do is look at the games that are coming out from the new Nintendo, what is it called, Game Garage, or look at the games that get made on Dreams, or look at the games that get made on a thing like Core Engine. 95% of them are crap, right? Not because people are idiots, but because it is really hard to make interactivity compelling. It is really hard to make interactivity compelling and fun and unique and commercial. Most of those games are just like, oh, look, I'm going to make PT again. Or, oh, I'm going to make my own version of Mario 64. Ha, 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 this is great. And it's like, yeah, it's great, but no one's going to buy it, right? You can't actually build a company around that. And so, you know, and that's my response. And Foreign Crook on the chat, you offer nothing. You offer nothing. He says, or she says, crunch is just embarrassing in general. Voluntary or not, it's simply terrible time management. The only thing I would say that's actually embarrassing is the fact that you are so uneducated about the topic, and yet you have no problem. It's actually quite impressive how dumb you are, and yet how bold you are about sharing your dumbness with the world. It's hard to tell if that's, I should be insulting you or admiring your idiocy. All right, George, I appreciate it, buddy. Thanks.
No worries.
All right. Oh, shit. I'm sorry, George. I did not mean to hang up on you, buddy. If you want to call back, I'll get you in. I apologize, buddy. All right, let me bring in Kuristafa. Kuristafa, go, buddy. What's up?
Hey, Jappy, I wanted to ask, why does your video have like 365 downvotes? Are you saying something controversial again about crunch?
I honestly don't know. I mean, it's probably, I really don't know, and I don't care. I always find it fascinating. Think about the fact that someone is sitting at their computer and they haven't even listened to what I'm saying. Anybody who listens to what I'm saying, maybe they would go, you know what, Jeffy's got a perspective. I don't agree with it. Let me go into the comments and tell the person why. But instead, think about someone's like, I'm going to hit the thumbs down. Yeah, think about how powerless that person must be in their life to think that's actually sticking it to the man. Give a fuck what my like ratio. And people on Twitter are like, you're getting ratioed, man. I'm like, motherfucker, I got a mortgage. I got kids. I'm 50 fucking years old. I need to lose a bunch of weight. You think I give a fuck about the goddamn how many thumbs down a YouTube video has? You goddamn moron. I don't have to tell you, man.
Okay, so Jappy, something I don't get, maybe you could help me answer this, is like, I understand the value of working like 40, 50, 60 hours a week. It's that whole like, you do get that extra pay, you do get that extra work, that extra experience and notoriety and notability, if you will. I see my brother work 40, 50 hours a week, but he's, building his like empire of a business. So
that's right.
I get that. But the thing is, what is with these people that say, no one should work more than 40 hours a week? Well, what if I want to? What if I actually want to work 50, 60 hours a week and I like writing? Right now I'm doing writing. What if I want to write 50, 60 hours a week and then someone tells me, oh, that's not correct. You're crazy. You're insane. You're weird. I'm the weird one? I don't get where that comes from.
Well, to be fair though, I do think there are the majority of people who have an issue with crunch are still saying it shouldn't be forced on you. But they are saying if you want to do that, you should do that. There are some people that say, no, even if you want to do it, it's bad for you. It's like, well, go fuck yourself. That's up to the person. But yeah, I mean, and you're absolutely right. You want to write a novel and you want to write it from 9 to 5, or if you want to write it all day long, chances are you're going to become a better writer than the other person, unless you're writing something that just gets lucky like The Secret and you go to the races, but you won't be able to replicate it.
I think you know what else it is like, so I know this sounds a bit political, but I think a lot of it might be the college money, because like you have a bunch of people who just graduate college and they're in a bunch of student debt, right? And then they start working at a company like Sony or Microsoft. And then when a company like Sony or Microsoft says, hey, we're going to have crunch, you don't have to work it, but it'd be nice if you could. There are people that are like, well, I mean, I don't want to, but I have to pay that student loan debt.
Well, it doesn't really work that way though, because ultimately, if you're salaried, you basically are going to get paid anyway. You're not going to get paid more if you crunch. I mean, maybe there's a case where they say, if you crunch, we'll give you a bigger bonus than if you don't crunch. I mean, I guess I've never seen that at Sony. And to be fair, I mean, crunch is basically, I would have to ask Shannon. I keep wanting to have her on the show and say, look, I'm sure an employee has come to her once and said, I don't want to work on weekends. And because at Sony, it was always, as long as you get the work done, and the work would always be taken around to the individuals and to the leads. And it would be like, what do you think you can do on this list? And the person would say, okay, I think I can name that tune in 10 notes, right? I can get these 12 things done before the end of March. And then ultimately, if it turned out they can't, more often than not, the crunch would just be like, you said you could do it. So if you can't do it and there's not a real meaningful reason why, it's not that you were demanded that you crunch, but I think it was an unspoken rule, but maybe it was a spoken rule. I don't know. But
do you think like there's some competition between like employees and future employees? Like let's say you have an employee that's working 40 hours a week, right? And then Sony says, we're in crunch period now. You got to do 50 hours a week. And then the employee says, well, I don't want to do 50 hours a week. Well, okay, you don't have to. But the next person that's going to replace you, they'll do 50 hours a week. You ever feel like there's some competition of like, well, if I don't do crunch, I might lose my job.
Well, that I don't know. Then you start to get into some real legal wrangling, and I cannot speak to that. I don't know that. I don't know. I'm sure companies have done that. That whole if you don't come in Sunday, don't worry about coming in Monday thing. But I haven't seen that at Sony. That doesn't mean there's no teams that do it. But what I will tell you is the crunch issue is exacerbated by the fact that, and maybe it'll get better. Maybe it's a lot of people who I do think are young complaining, but a lot of it is that all these people, not on my chat, but a lot of people want to go into the business. And so if somebody's like, fuck this, I have a family, I'm out, there are 300 people that will pack up their car and move tomorrow to take that job. That's just the way it is. That's the way it is. So maybe these younger generation will start communicating with their own, constituents, and there won't be as much of a desire to go into the business, or there will be, but it'll be like, I'm going in, but my employment conditions are I will not crunch, and I want that written into a contract. I think that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. All right,
Yeah,
all right,
Jackie,
man.
Wait. I got one last thing.
Real quick.
Can I reply to a comment I saw that really?
Fast. Go.
All right, Gavin House, working 60 hours a week gives you the same feeling as lifting the heaviest you've ever lifted. Run down, dirty, and unclean. No, fuck you, Gavin House. If anything, I love working 60 hours a week. And if you call me run down, dirty, unclean, I'm a successful person. I love who I am. I love the things I do. Thank you very much, Jackie.
Thanks, man. Call back anytime. All right, there you go, Gavin. Take that, you old so-and-so. Some dude, it's a great question. Do you feel like modern games, AAA games, are daring enough given their focus and storytelling? I mean, some of them are, but it's less about the storytelling and more about the obsession with production value. It's easy to sell production value. It's hard to sell play mechanics. I am literally playing a game right now. I'm going to stream it tonight if I have time, that you would look at, and someone like Bacon Magma, who's a member of our chat, would probably just be like, dude, that looks so dumb. But it's a lot of fun, but it's hard to communicate that. It's easy to communicate visual. All right, George, I don't have time for a conversation. I didn't mean to cut you off. What were you going to say? George.
Jeff, you hear me?
Yeah, real quick. What were you going to say?
Sorry about that. I just wanted to tell you something really quickly about Ratchet and Clank that I thought was interesting.
No. Tell me, is it about this topic?
It's crunch, yeah.
All right, real quick, go.
All right. Timeline, 2001. They make Ratchet and Clank 1. It takes 1 year to make. Timeline after that. They make Ratchet and Clank the second game. The entire period of the game, they crunch the entire time. 50 people working for the company.
Are you making this up, or you're saying this is true?
I'm saying this is true based on sources I saw from a video from someone that talked to the developers from those games.
Okay.
I could tell you the source.
No, that's not, I just want to make sure. Keep going.
I keep going, right. So 2001 to 2005, basically, they make 4 Ratchet and Clank games from all sources from multiple developers working at the time there. From all we know, basically everyone said crunch was terrible, and it lasted the entire life cycle of the game. So basically, the game took a year and a half to make. The entire cycle was crunch, and it just progressively got worse and worse. There was no point where it wasn't.
Okay, I got it. Keep going.
Right. Now, why does this tie into the new game? What happens is, when you do a series for such a long time, where you know the core pillars so well of the series, and you don't innovate it to the point where fundamental things change, things become easier. Yep. You have the same voice actors. You have the same basic gameplay with weapons. You have the same.
Right. I've made this point. Are you going to add to it, or that's the gist?
Yeah, the gist is you can't really have big AAA games not having crunch unless they have basically 90% of the work done from previous games, because it's a legacy series. If it's a new game with innovation, you can't have it without. That's it.
I think there's a lot of truth to that. Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Thanks, George. Somebody in the chat is, again, I don't know what to tell you. It's just, he says, Zoom Master says, I can't believe there's people who don't know the negative effects of crunch. There aren't people who don't know the negative effects of crunch. But people are willing to do it because the benefit to those individuals outweighs the negatives for those individuals. All right. This is a guy named And O-Y, I think. Are you there? Andy Y? Am I saying your name right?
Andrew Y. But yeah, you can just call me.
All right, what's up, Ben?
I wanted to know, has anyone in this streamer before like clearly delineated between crunch and overtime?
Crunch and what?
Overtime.
Well, there's no real difference. I mean, ultimately, the only difference is overtime is paid, and it's usually paid a higher percentage, usually 2.5. Like in unions, for example, if you work in the movies, there's overtime, and okay. you know, but we've talked about the fact that in movies or even at Sony, like one guy called in who was in QA as a contractor, the contractor, those guys usually get sent home. Because if they work after 6 o'clock, you have to pay them more money. But the salaried guys and girls do not get sent home because they're salaried, and they'll get hopefully bonuses or some incentive to keep staying there.
Okay. So yeah, you're talking like overtime in terms of like the pay. I'm talking more of like the cultural difference. So I'm not sure what you would call it, but my definition between crunch and overtime is that overtime is what you were talking about before. You're coming up to a milestone, you're 2 weeks out, you're coming up to launch. And yeah, people are going to have to put in more work and wrapping everything up. Everyone's going to be on call, you're waiting on the build, blah, blah, blah. And then how I would define crunch then is constant overtime. Like it is EA spouse level of overtime.
Well, I mean, that depends on the product. Certainly there is that kind of crunch, and there's God of War crunch, and there is we just have to crunch for a couple of weeks. I mean, it's ultimately it's variations on a theme, but it's all ultimately the same thing.
So yeah, I'm gonna say that like crunch is like, to me at least, it's more than 2 weeks. It's constant. It is mandated or heavily implied by management. You know, it's like, and even if you're a salary person, like the person before was talking about, like, oh, well, you know, if you're just out of school, you might get written up. I'm a developer. Like, I've been, like, at my first job, I was let go near the end of the project. And they gave me some, like, you know, excuse. Like I know about, like, when projects wrap up and they launch, like, people get let go, but then they, for whatever reason, gave me some BS your performance wasn't satisfactory excuse, I guess, to get around some sort of whatever legal thing that's here in Montreal. Yeah, so like you have there is something to your argument when like you are making a new thing and you are being creative and you are like really pulling from within yourself and your team and you're exploring new things. That takes a lot of work, but creativity is also like in the moment, and it's supposed to be fun. Like you talked about movies earlier, but like when I think of like people being musically creative, like I watch a lot of like hip hop producers like Kenny Beats, and they're just smoking weed in the studio like all the time. Like it's not oppressive. It's fun and experimental. You were talking about too earlier, like how like a big AAA game has a lot of moving parts, has a lot of you know, people on it and management and blah blah blah, and it's really hard to steer that ship. Like if a mechanic doesn't work or if there's a huge bug or a problem. I used to work at Behavior, and their main game that people will know them from is or know about them is Dead by Daylight. And Dead by Daylight came from, there was a very small, like 1, 2, or 3 person team. I forget what it was called, but it was like a Skunkworks style team where they just like open up Unity and they crank something out in a week and they see if it's fun. So that is, you know, what I would suggest to like a lot of these AAA companies. And they don't even have to do that. You can look at, you know, all of the weird and smaller titles on
I assure you, though, they do that. I did that as well. But ultimately, though, you know, a lot of these AAA games these days is, I mean, even though like something like the Spider-Man swinging mechanic, it had, I believe if I read it right, like 1 programmer on it or 2 programmers on it for the entire time of a huge team. Even though you might have the genesis of a fun idea, you've still got to basically figure out how to actually make it into a shippable product. And then if you throw online into that, and how does the mechanic at a code level work online, and how much of it is server based of the code and how much of it is local, and can it even work online in a way that's satisfying? I mean, it's a huge challenge. It's not like sitting in a recording studio with 5 other people and you know how the mixing board works, and the mixing board works today the same way it worked 5 years ago, and now it's just about creating. It's there's a lot of things that get in the way of being in that state of creative zen in video games. It's not jazz. It can't be. It can maybe if you're doing something simple, but all right. Thanks, man. I appreciate the call. I hear what you're saying though. Thanks, buddy. All right. I just want to get 2 things in the chat real fast. This guy VVL says crunch should always pay overtime. I mean, come on, have some decency. I thought you were a leftist. I didn't say it shouldn't. I'm saying it doesn't. I'm saying that if look, here's what I'll tell you. If a state or America or at a federal level wants to make a law that says even if you're salaried, after you work a certain amount of hours, you will get some kind of overtime based on a formula of your salary, I would be fine with that. But what gamers would have to be fine with is games will either become more expensive, they will take longer, and or they will become less production heavy, because it will cost more to make games, and there will be a response to that, whether it's more money to cost to make them and to charge you for them, or the time you have to wait for them, or the number of games that are really like big production games, they'll take longer. I'm not opposed to it. I'm just saying right now, legally, that's not the case. I've always been like, yeah, let's solve it. But these are hard solves. They're not just, you don't just go to a producer and say, oh, you shouldn't crunch, it's mean. Most good producers in the industry will go, oh, I mean, they're not going to go, oh, really? I didn't know that. Thank you so much for telling me. They know that. And trust me, in competitive markets, you think Yumi Yang, who runs Sony Santa Monica now, isn't terrified of the bleeding razor's edge she has to walk between making sure that team continues to pump out best of breed games in that space, but also is fully aware that there's like 20 other highly paying video game companies all around town, that the minute an important member of that team starts to feel burnt out or starts to feel like they're not being respected at the level that they deserve to be respected at in their minds, she knows she's going to lose them. And that could totally deflate a big part of what that game's about. It is not that these people are morons. This is a very hard technical problem. And it's there. You will find very few people, I can name you some, that don't give a fuck. It's not that people don't care. It's that there aren't a lot of ways right now, there aren't a lot of levers to pull that are pullable to solve it. Matt DeMarco says, if the game business financially dwarfs the film business, why is this so woefully behind in terms of workers' rights? Because films are made at a local level with physical bodies. It all comes down to unions. It all comes down to the fact that if the ACs strike, or if the grips and electricians strike, you're kind of fucked. Especially since all the other people have signed up to be in the union. And if the SAG folks are striking, or the writers are striking, then other times other unions will strike in solidarity. But in video games, the publishers just go, okay, we'll outsource it. Not a problem. That's why. All right, this is a guy named, or a girl named Pog Hill. What's up, Pog Hill?
Hey.
One sec.
Sure
Are you going to walk? All right, have fun. I'll see you when you get back. All right, go ahead, bud.
Okay, hold on. Let me mute your stream. I'm getting feedback.
Okay.
Hi. Making sure my mic's working and everything.
All good.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to just make this really quick. First off, a little introduction. I don't have any... I'm not in the industry at all or anything like that, so I'm not going to try and even pretend like I have any knowledge about any of this.
Okay.
When it comes to all that. When it comes to your opinion on crunch, I do agree with a lot of it, mostly. So there are a few fine points that are moral quandaries and stuff like that I don't really care for discussing, because it's everyone different, you know. But I wanted to talk about a couple things. One, there was a guest on earlier that brought up the point of how countries outside of the United States of America, not just America, because, you know, we're not talking about Canada or Southern America, anything like that, right? Just or we're just talking about U.S. A lot of countries in like not Eastern Europe, sorry, in Europe in general have improved work hours and improved work efficiency for most of the country and improved on crunch. And you brought up the point of, well, do they, or what goods are these actually, like these countries actually producing? You know, is there any specific you know, have they actually shipped anything like video games and stuff like that? You know, I think it was the Netherlands that was brought up.
Yep.
For bringing keeping work weeks at 40 hours, but bringing it down to 4-day work day.
Okay.
And I wanted to bring up, well, I'm not sure about the Netherlands because I don't really look into, I haven't looked into specific games from the Netherlands. I would like to bring up one company, or well, at least one studio that's done a great job in reducing crunch is the studio that works on Final Fantasy 14, the entire team for that, right? And I don't know if you consider Kotaku a source here, but I'm going to, regardless of whether you do or not.
Yeah, I do.
Okay, cool. So they brought up in a recent article that a lot of their extra features and new stuff is brought up upon by workers that are working overtime of their own volition, because they just genuinely enjoy the work. Now, I don't disagree that crunch is bad or anything. I do think that people should be allowed to work more if they want to work more, as long as they're getting paid appropriately and everything, you know, getting overtime. But there should be an onus on the management to push as hard as possible to deny working overtime, to get people home on time. You know, and then on top of that, the team there has basically mandated that everyone there only works about 30 hours a week and is properly going home time and making sure that there's no crunch going on. And Final Fantasy XIV continues to succeed and succeed and succeed.
Yeah, but Final Fantasy XIV is the online game, right?
Yes, it's still a AAA team, though. It's still
it's not a AAA team. But that said, though, it is a game that at this point is up and running. I would ask you if that is how they got the game launched, because like somebody in the chat is saying they're making expansions, they're adding features, but the core game is already done, right? It's like
it's an MMO. The core game of an MMO is whatever they keep adding on to, you know.
Well, again, here's the gist. Here's the gist. The fact of the matter is, I assume you're bringing it up because you're going, see, look, there's a solve. Let me ask you, do you honestly?
I'm giving it as
but it's not
an example,
right?
Not every single thing,
right? But it's an example that has enough caveats that doesn't necessarily make it applicable to something like The Last of Us or God of War or Ghost of Tsushima or Cyberpunk. And so to that end, I would say that, again, these are not companies, you know, this is not a sweatshop in China where it's run by some cartoon villain that just wants to make all the ducats they can make. It's, you know, these, like I just said, Yumi.
No, but every single company is looking to make as much of a profit as possible.
I understand.
And they don't care about their employees as much as you might think that they do.
I understand that, but what I'm saying to you is, like I just said, like take Yumi Yang, who's running Sony Santa Monica. Even if all Yumi Yang cares about is money, which is not the case, but let's say all she cared about was making all the money in the world, or all she cared about was making the business she works for, which is Sony money. Ultimately, though, because there is so much competition for these very talented workers, if she doesn't find that line between crunch, so the gamer is satisfied, but not so much crunch that she loses these people to all of the other competition in the area, then they will not make money. So it's not like they don't care about it. It's that ultimately it is a very hard problem to solve. And you calling up and saying, without being very specific, it's like just saying, because what you're really suggesting is because that game, even though I think there are some caveats, if the Naughty Dog guys just sent everybody home, you can only work 40 hours a week, sorry, they would still have the same quality of game that could be competitive. I guess my response would be, do you think the producers are just morons then, that you figured out something that they haven't?
I do think that the producers on The Last of Us Part 2 were morons. You can see based on how that game went that they were morons. But my opinion of The Last of Us Part 2 has nothing to do with...
Okay, God of War.
Crunch.
Take any big game that's crunched that's not CD Projekt Red.
I wasn't talking about CD Projekt Red.
I know. I am, because they crunch for a different reason is what I'm saying.
I mean, they crunched because they kept getting pushed back and back and back.
Well, that's not why they crunched. But that was literally bad management. But if you're taking a game you like that crunch, that you don't like that they crunch, forget Last of Us. Are you suggesting that you simply know that if they just went home at the end of 40 hours, everything would be great and the quality of the game would be the same?
No, I opened this entire thing by saying I'm not an industry veteran or a professional here, so I'm just stating my opinion here.
I know,
so
but is that your opinion?
My opinion is that with proper management, yes, you should be able to get everything done properly on a 40-hour work week with good management. You know,
it doesn't make it.
If other people can do it, then
no one can do it. No one can do it.
I just gave you
pointed
an
out
example of one.
Well, first off, you pointed out Final Fantasy XIV, which does not look anywhere near as good at a production level as the games that we're talking about. You're also talking about a game that is a service-based game that once they have the core template laid down, every milestone can be iterative, and they still are making money off the title. It's not apples to apples at all. That's not a really good example. I mean, let's look at Final Fantasy XIV right now. Let's look at what it looks like. I haven't looked at it in a long time, but let's see. I want to see it. I'm curious.
I mean, I'd say it's pretty middle bar right now, for MMOs.
Okay.
I don't think it's better than World of Warcraft, but it's not like, what is it? Black Desert Online, Crimson Desert, as it's going to be in a bit.
Let's just take a look.
Because those are like.
All right, so this is currently state of the art when it comes to, I guess, right? This is Final Fantasy 14. What you're looking at right there.
Yeah, it's working off an engine that's since 2014.
Sure. So my guess would be is if Naughty my guess would be is if Naughty Dog released Last of Us Part 3 or God of War looked like this, they would probably not do very well when it comes to gamers.
But there's more than just graphics to a game.
You're telling me that? You think I don't know that? I agree.
I know you know that. I know you worked on God of War.
No. I play most indie games. I agree. I'm always frustrated by the fact that gamers are so obsessed with production value that they can't understand that the beauty, the brilliance of the medium is interactivity. Right? I get it. But ultimately, the market decides, and the market is set. As much as we hear you, Jaffe, we want our pretty graphics. And I say, yeah, but have you played Ultra Kill? Ultra Kill's the best shooter, the best action game of last year.
I played Ultra Kill.
I know you have. I have. But when I ask people, they're like, that game looks like shit. That looks like a fucking indie game. And I'm like, well, yeah.
Oh, sorry, 1 second. I have someone coming.
That's all right. Anyway, I got your point, Pog. Thanks, buddy. All right, let me bring in the last call of the day. This is Zim. Zim, you've been waiting patiently. I appreciate it. What's up, man?
Yeah, what's up, bro?
Not much. How you doing?
My thing about this whole crunch thing is that I think people are ignoring is who's driving the conversation.
What do you mean?
Is it people from outside of the industry that never created things that did in life, or is it people actually in the industry saying, "Well, hold on, y'all working us a little too hard." Because I'm hearing like bits of entitlement. And bits of people who don't have any experience talking about crunch.
Well, I definitely think that is part of it. But I also think there are people in the industry, and I don't see any of them chiming in right now, but we have industry people who watch the stream and talk all the time. Ultimately, I've never heard. They understand when you make games, you know what it is, and you also know that There are companies you stay away from. Like we had a guy leave Bartlett Jones to go work at I won't say the name of the company, but it's a very big company that is notorious in San Diego for crunch. And we said to him, it's like, we hate to lose you, but just so we're clear, we can't offer you financially what they're offering. And he made a better call because, you know, we went out of business and they're still in business. But ultimately, we're like, you know, though, that's just like a total sweatshop. He says, yeah, I know, but it's closer to my family. I just had a kid. And I was like, yeah, but you'll never see him. He's like, yeah, no, I know. But yeah, there are industry people that I've always said that as long as you know what you're getting into, then buyer beware. It's when the companies lie to you and they say we're not a crunch culture. That's the problem I have.
I mean, and a lot of it, I'm wondering, you know, if crunch is involved, are the directors, you know, are the upper management asking people to do things that they haven't done themselves? Because I think you said you used to be a QA tester. I started as QA, yes. So if you ask a motherfucker to walk into a wall for 10 hours to see if he slipped through it, you're not asking him to do anything that you haven't done, you know, when you was coming up. Well, that's not always the case. If basically what I can't, the whole reason video games are so hard is because you have so many disciplines that are, you know, there's no one on a team that has done everything because it's so specialized now. So what I do though is I go to the individual and I go to the leads and I say, I really want, I want a character that moves like this, and when he engages with things in the world that are bouncy, I want the animation to do this. And if we've hired well, we'll debate and we'll horse trade a little bit until we go, okay, this is what we think is actually doable. And then we'll go, okay, that's the plan. But it's not for me to know their job. That would be like I have to be an expert in animation and programming and network code, in level building and character building and music. I mean, it's not really like that. There's too many disciplines that make up making these giant games. Yeah, I mean, it's like that in other industries too. Like, let's say Bill Parcells wasn't a quarterback, but you know, he can help manage workload for, you know, quarterbacks or running backs. Nobody's going to tell him how he should manage his players. You know, so I'm wondering, would it be out of bounds for y'all to like pull rank on some of the people, you know, complaining about crunch? Like, look, y'all don't really know what it takes to make, you know, a AAA game, a single A game, anything on that level. So, you know, let us, you know, educate you about what it takes to do this, as opposed to you all going out writing articles and trying to vilify us in front of the public. Do you mean on the team, or do you mean in the media? In the media. Well, I'm saying, why don't we see more creatives and more people from the industry pushing back in the media? Well, you know, okay, so like, you know, so here's the default thing is to say, well, we don't do it, we don't like crunch and all that. Okay, well, here's the real answer. The real answer is the people in the media that are complaining about crunch are just as affected and just as guilty, if you want to use that word, by the exact same problem, which is capitalism, right? Jason Schreier, like I've said, Jason Schreier has broken some really important stories when it comes to toxic workplaces and sexual assaults at places. It's wonderful. Not the assault, but the breaking the story. But do you think the guy wrote the book on a 9-to-5 schedule, or do you think he busted his ass to make sure it was the best book he could write? Do you think that these people who write about crunch, it's like today you can write about crunch that we're hearing about coming out of Insomniac that you know is going to get a lot of clicks, which means we're going to make more money. Or you can write about the artist who decided to do this character for some obscure indie game because it reminded her of her dead father. Oh, I'll take the article about crunch, please, because I'll make more money, right? And so ultimately, everybody is chasing the safety that money brings and the success that money brings and the desire to have whatever it is that money brings and capitalism brings. And I'm not saying I agree with that, but I've always felt it's disingenuous for these reporters to go on about all these things that they find problematic when in their own way, in their own industry, they are doing the exact same level of going above and beyond in order to stand out from the crowd. I mean, that is the culture in the West that we have built and that we have said
is desirable. Now, I don't always agree with that, but that's what we got. All right.
All right, Jeff. I'll let you get back to your stream. I see you called us Marxists in the chat, but that's bullshit.
That's right. Thank you,
It's
sir.
just the reality of it is.
That's right.
All right.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks, buddy. All right, fellas, that's it. We did not make our goal, but I'll tell you what, we raised a nice little sum of cash. We just got a new anonymous donation for $50 to the Trevor Project. We're up to $169, which is kind of a funny number. This is all going to the Trevor Project, which is a great organization. And yes, today, Pat, I don't know his last name, but this guy who has Pat Looks at Chaos or something like that, or looks into the chaos. That guy put in $400. So at least that's all that really fucking matters when it comes to that. So all that you guys have contributed, thank you guys very, very much. To the mods, thank you very, very much. To all the conversation today, I appreciate it. Thought it was interesting. I hope you enjoyed it as well. Tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. California time, PST. The one, the only, the legend, John Romero is going to be on the show. He will be taking your calls. And kind of answering your questions, and we will be talking about all kinds of things. Jarvie Rocks, thank you so much for that donation. He just dropped in another $20, got us above the 69 number. We are now at 89. There you go. I appreciate it, fellas. I'll see you soon on the next stream. I might be streaming later tonight. Some brand new games. Be safe, be good. I'll see you guys. Bye, everyone.